In Britain's conversation, this is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, Andy Burnham has confirmed he will look to stand in the Makerfield by-election for Labour. The constituency's current MP, Josh Simons, is standing down to pave the way for the Greater Manchester Mayor to return to Westminster. In last week's local elections, Reform won almost 50% of the vote there. The Work and Pensions Secretary, Pat McFadden, has told Tonight with Andrew Marr the move to replace Sir Keir Starmer might backfire.
Doing it in this route, through an unnecessary by-election, is always a risky prospect. History shows us that, and we mustn't be complacent about the voters here, because in the end, the people who will decide who the next MP for Makerfield is will be the voters in that constituency. Whoever is the candidate, if it's Andy or if it's another person, I will be there campaigning for a Labour victory in that seat.
The announcement follows Wes Streeting's resignation from government earlier. The former Health Secretary says he had lost confidence in the Prime Minister, but stopped short of triggering a leadership contest. Zabir Ahmed worked under Mr Streeting as a junior minister and resigned earlier this week while calling for Sir Keir Starmer to go. He refused to tell Andrew Marr whether his former boss has the numbers to challenge the PM.
So, through my conversations with the Parliamentary Labour Party, it's undoubtable that Wes is a generationally talented politician amongst many generationally talented politicians. He has a critical mass of support amongst colleagues up and down the country in all parts of the country. So I think that is not the numbers, are not the issue here.
The number is you've got to have 80 or 81.
So what I'm telling you is the number is not the issue, because I think he does have that critical mass of support.
Number 10 insists the Prime Minister will fight a leadership challenge. Tom Baldwin is a former Labour Party senior advisor and Sir Keir Starmer's biographer. He's told Andrew the PM won't give up easily.
I think Keir Starmer's position is, look, if people want to have a leadership contest, get the names, and then you can have a leadership contest. But until then, why should he be expected to set out some timetable for departure? And people constantly want to throw this up and get more frenzy going and get the media going and breaking news here, a dramatic day in Westminster. And, until someone gets 81 names, there is no leadership contest. Full stop.
Other candidates could include Energy Secretary Ed Miliband, former Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner and Armed Forces Minister Al Carnes. Also this evening, the King has visited North London to show solidarity with the area's Jewish community after last month's terror attack. 2 men were stabbed in Golders Green. Hundreds of people came out to greet Charles on the streets. Nigel Farage insists there is no connection between a £5 million gift he received and a property he bought soon after. It's understood the purchase for £1.4 million was completed in May 2024, weeks before he decided to stand in the general election. The Reform UK leader is also facing an investigation over his failure to declare the donation to Parliament. He denies wrongdoing. And Donald Trump has hailed his initial talks with China's leader as great on the first day of his 2-day state visit to Beijing. The meeting at the country's Great Hall lasted 2 hours, double their intended duration. He and Xi Jinping are expected to discuss Iran in a second session of discussions. Former US National Security Advisor in the first Trump administration, John Bolton, told LBC Trump wants out of the situation to save face at home.
Gasoline prices are going up. The latest inflation figure for April was plus 3.8% over last year. This is serious. Trump knows this. It's negative effect on the economy, will have a negative effect on already pretty chancy Republican odds for November, keeping control of the House and the Senate. That'll simply worry Trump more.
In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 47 points at 10,372. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather turning drier overnight as clear spells develop. Some showers continuing in the far north, southwest and Northern Ireland, lows of 1. A mixture of cloud and sunny spells tomorrow, as well as a few lingering showers. These will be heaviest in the southeast, a high of 15 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 7 on LBC. Welcome to the show. It's Iain Dale here with you until 10. Don't forget you can watch the whole show now on the Global Player app, the LBC app, and indeed on the LBC YouTube channel. Another very dramatic day. I'm not going to give you any sort of long monologue of analysis because there's so many things that have happened, which we'll cover in a second with Aggie Chambray. But the question I want to put to you tonight, and we're going to run this question through this hour and the 9 o'clock hour, is this. Of the four main leadership rivals, which include Keir Starmer, and I'm going to include Wes Streeting, Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham, because I don't think Ed Miliband is going to stand. So let's exclude him for the moment. Of those four, which do you think would make the best Prime Minister? Not necessarily the best leader of the Labour Party, the best Prime Minister, because that's what the Labour Party members will be doing if there is a contest. They will be electing a Prime Minister. And I think a lot of them will be minded to follow sort of sectarian political prejudices, if you like, where if you're on the left of the Labour Party, you're probably going to vote for a left-wing candidate. If you're on the right, you'll vote for a right-wing candidate. But surely the overwhelming thing should be who would make the best Prime Minister. I've got a very clear view of who I think that would be. I think it would be Wes Streeting. I think he would be the best leader of the country out of those four. You may well disagree, and I'd love to hear from you if you do disagree with me. I actually think that people underestimate Angela Rayner as well, and she may have a wider appeal within the Labour Party membership. Andy Burnham still, I think, is unlikely to stand because this constituency that he's apparently going to try to run in, Makerfield, it's got a pretty narrow majority of 5,000. It used to be one of the safest Labour seats in the country. It no longer is. It had a massive Leave vote in the Brexit referendum. Reform UK really surged at the last election. And I think that Reform UK will put every effort to make sure that they win that by-election, in which case Andy Burnham is toast. So he may not even be among them. So those are the questions I want to hear from you over the course of the next, nearly 3 hours. Aggie Chambray joins me, LBC's Deputy Political Editor. Now, it has been quite a day, hasn't it, where you have Angela Rayner saying that she's been cleared by HMRC, although that's what she says. There are differing views on that, though, and we'll hear about that a little later in this hour. You then have Wes Streeting resigning, issuing, I think, a very well-crafted but very, scathing resignation letter. And then you have the news that Josh Simons is going to stand down to allow Andy Burnham to stand. And in the last few minutes, the breaking news that Keir Starmer apparently won't try to stand in his way to do that. Is Keir Starmer in a stronger position at the end of today than he was at the beginning?
Yes, but massive, massive caveat for now.
Because I think he's not in a stronger position. I think he's in a weaker position. I think a leadership contest is now almost inevitable.
Yes, but wasn't it inevitable this morning? So what has happened today, and I say yes, he's more safe than he was this morning, is because simply Wes Streeting didn't immediately challenge him. And this morning it looked like 6 a.m, Angela Rayner's being cleared. Thus, she could, if she wanted, she could have done anyway, but people didn't think that was realistic, stand in a leadership contest. She said she wouldn't trigger one. But then at 1 p.m, Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, resigns, as you mentioned, with that pretty excoriating letter to the Prime Minister saying that despite the Prime Minister's courage and statesmanship, where we need vision, we have a vacuum. So if Wes Streeting had then triggered a leadership contest and say Angela Rayner had been a part of that, well, according to Labour list polling, Angela Rayner then would have won that contest against Wes Streeting and also Keir Starmer. Wes Streeting, though, actually, according to this same polling, which is done for Labour members, about what Labour members think, who are the people, as you know, who get the vote, Wes Streeting wouldn't beat Keir Starmer. Ed Miliband and Andy Burnham would also beat Keir Starmer in that polling, which I think is interesting as well. But Wes Streeting didn't launch a challenge. He didn't launch a challenge. It depends who you talk to, the reason why. Either because he didn't have the numbers being 81 Labour MPs backing a named challenger, or because he genuinely thought that it wouldn't work with the current chaos and stasis, painful stasis the Labour Party is in, to not have Andy Burnham as part of that contest. So in his letter that he wrote, he mentioned that he wanted basically all of the candidates, all the best candidates, to be involved in that process. And now, of course, we have not only a seat potentially for Andy Burnham, that's Makerfield, that Josh Simons, the former minister as well, which is slightly extraordinary. He called for Keir Starmer to go on Sunday, but he was quite recently a minister in Sir Keir Starmer's government. He has said he's going to stand down. Andy Burnham said he's going to stand. And as you say, in the last few minutes, we've got a statement from an ally of Starmer who said Keir is focused on bringing the party together so it can tackle the issues facing working families, and effectively saying that he's not going to stand in the way of the National Executive Committee and they basically won't block Andy Burnham like they did earlier in the year.
Voters don't like a sense of entitlement. And the fact that this by-election has been triggered and it will cost the taxpayer a six-figure sum to hold this by-election, and purely so Andy Burnham can come back into the House of Commons. I mean, there are so many hurdles now for Andy Burnham to cross, aren't there? Not least, the NEC, I think, will allow him to stand. I mean, I'm not sure, will there be other people putting their names in to stand against him? I don't know, but he presumably will win through that. But his prospects for winning that by-election, I mean, if you believe, as many people do, that he is literally seen as a god in the Northwest and can just walk into any seat that he likes, well, fair enough. I don't think the electorate think like that.
Well, should we talk about the stats for that by-election? So in 2024, Josh Simons, who was the MP there, won with a 5,400 majority. Not to be sniffed at. I don't think you'd call that a marginal seat. It's not great, though. I think you were suggesting last night that anything with sort of 8,000 majority they'd probably lose. So that was the starting position, 5,400 votes. But in the locals last week, 8 Makerfield wards voted last week. Reform got 50% of the vote and Labour got 22% of the vote. And
so presumably Reform won them all?
Reform, yes. Yeah. Reform won them all. However, back to that, there's so many ifs, buts, howevers in this story. In 2024 mayoral election, Andy Burnham won 62% of the vote in Makerfield. So in the mayoral election. So how much sway will his personal brand carry? Will the tagline, and it genuinely could be the things that people are saying behind the scenes, vote Labour, get out Starmer, how effective will that be in this by-election? But effectively what we have is the people of Makerfield essentially, potentially choosing the next Prime Minister.
Well, there's a thought. Aggie, thank you very much indeed. That's Aggie Chambray, our Deputy Political Editor. Well, Andy MacDonald joins me now, Labour MP for Middlesbrough and Thornaby East. Andy, very good evening to you. What a muddle.
Well, what a drama. I'm pleased that the Prime Minister has said that at least he's not going to block Andy Burnham again, because I think it was a huge mistake to do that last time around. Well, you're right in what you're saying about the hills that have to be climbed. You cannot take the vote for granted. And it's even on 2024, Makerfield was not a huge majority, 5,400, I think, or in that ballpark. If Andy Burnham is going to be selected to fight the seat, he's got to convince the people of Makerfield that he deserves their support. So that's the first challenge. And then once in, of course, if there is an election, his next electorate is the Parliamentary Labour Party, and then onwards the members of the Labour Party. So nothing's a given, but it looks as though the message is getting home in certain quarters that we need to change. We cannot sit on our hands on these terrible results and make it. We've just heard how it played out in Makerfield. We wiped out in Scotland and Wales and in the northeast of England where I am. That was a disaster. So we just can't simply say all is well. We'll just carry on as we are. And of course, if Keir wanted to reset, then his attempts on Monday and indeed at the King's speech, his address to Parliament, I'm afraid didn't do it. I don't think that convinced anybody that there's going to be that radical change and improvement in people's material living conditions, that they could say, yes, the Labour Party is delivering, despite all the good things that we've been doing. But it isn't cutting through. If we can stay as we are, we look at the polls, we're on 17%. Do we really think that that is sustainable going forward? And when you've got all of the general secretaries of the affiliated trade unions saying Keir Starmer will not lead us into the next, should not lead us into the next election, this is serious stuff, and it needs an appropriate response. Wes has done what he's done. He's set out the reasons why. I'm of the view that there needs to be that broad church return to pluralism, so we can have that debate about the direction of the country, and not to close that down. And there's been far too keen an instinct within the Labour Party to close down that discussion and to ostracise people who may express dissent.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because
not the right way to go about it.
I mean, that's exactly what Wes Streeting was saying in his resignation letter to Keir Starmer, wasn't he?
Well, I think that's a broadly held view, that's been an erroneous path to say we have this. The strength of the Labour Party is that pluralism, and it's holding that broad church together. And I look to the Labour Party of Australia, which actually recognises that and say that's our strength, let's work together. That's not been the case, and there's been plea after plea for unity where the practice has been one of division. And that has to change. We can't have people feeling that it isn't their political home, as many have done over the last several years. We lose our power base, we lose our active base, our activist base. That's the wrong thing to do. You've got to understand what the Labour Party is, and I'm afraid Keir has demonstrated that, as a relative newcomer into the Labour Party since 2015, I'm afraid he just doesn't get it. And I'm afraid that's where we are, why we are where we are.
And what are your own members in Middlesbrough telling you?
I mean, up to today, I think they've been pretty despondent. We didn't have elections in Middlesbrough, but we did have in Hartlepool across the water. And there were 12 seats up for election. We lost every single one to Reform. And further up in the northeast, in Sunderland and Gateshead and elsewhere, it was even worse. So that feeling is, my goodness, things have got to change. We remain of the view that the Labour Party is still the best option we have for economic and social improvement in our country. And I'm afraid it's being carelessly handled right now, and it has to change. Otherwise, our purpose will have disappeared if we see a Reform government entering in. And, for example, we see all those benefits of the Employment Rights Act repealed and working people's conditions at work diminished even further, and their living conditions worsened too. That is something I'm not prepared to sit down and see happen without putting up an alternative.
And what should be uppermost in Labour Party members' minds? Should they think to themselves that I need to vote for the person who will make the best Prime Minister, or should I vote for the person who I think will do the best for the Labour Party in fighting reform? Because, in a sense, those two questions could have very different answers, couldn't they?
I see them as absolutely coterminous. What's in the best interest of the country come first, but we need to sustain this Labour government. We will not achieve what we want to achieve in one term. We need to, at the very least, look forward to a second term when we can implement the full range of social and economic change. That is in our best interest. And of course, if we have an election for the leader of the Labour Party, it will be about who will make the best Prime Minister for our country.
OK, and your conclusion is who?
Well, until such times I know who they are, it's no secret that I supported Andy Burnham in 2015. The discussion today has been about Andy. But like every candidate who may come forward, they're going to have to be tested with their programme, how that stands up to the rigour of scrutiny by the membership, first of all, in the PLP and the membership more widely. And Andy Burnham is subject to that, the same as any other candidate. I wait to see what they have to say.
Andy, thank you very much indeed. That's Andy MacDonald there, Labour MP for Middlesbrough and Thornaby East. You're listening to LBC, it's 7:20.
PM Under Pressure. Follow it live on LBC.
Feel every pass and every goal. Discover the next generation of televisions at John Lewis. Experience the full clarity of the latest RGB and OLED technology. Brought to you by some of the world's best brands. Price matched against 25 leading retailers with a 5-year guarantee on all TVs. Your best view of every game is available right now at John Lewis. It's football upgraded. T's and C's and exclusions apply. See johnlewis.com for details.
At John Lewis Money, we know your home is more than an address. It's the sunlight pouring in. Well, sometimes. The coffee on tap and the best spot on the sofa. It's why our home insurance is thoughtfully designed with 3 levels of flexible cover for the home you've created. Because when you notice the details, you notice the difference. Search John Lewis Money. Terms and exclusions apply. John Lewis Finance Limited is authorised for insurance distribution and credit broking by the Financial Conduct Authority.
Buying a home on a holiday park was the retreat you always wanted. But then came unexpected site fee increases. And that was before the dramatic loss in value. If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, you may have been missold. holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive thousands in compensation. Text ASSIST to 78900. That's ASSIST to 78900.
Iain Dale, text 84850. This is LBC.
7:22 on LBC. Aggie was mentioning this poll that Salvation have done for Labour list, polling Labour Party members. Damien Lyonslow joins me, Chief Executive of Salvation. Damien, very good evening to you. Can you tell us about how you choose who to poll in this? Because I know when Conservative Home have done similar polls, it's very easy to have sort of, well, what would now be called Reform UK voters sort of slipping into the sample here. I mean, how sure are you that all of the people that you polled are actually Labour Party members?
So we've decided to use a trust basis. So we ran about...
Never a good idea in politics.
Well, I don't believe there are any members polling that exists that is published where people make the members share their ID cards. So we do know that the sort of people that would read Labour List online publication, they are members of the Labour Party typically, and they generally.
But I read it.
Yep. Oh, and have you told Salvation that you're a Labour Party member?
No, I haven't, but I'm sure there may be people that have.
Right. So as long as there are enough people generally telling the truth, right, and that the lies don't outweigh the truth, as with any opinion poll that's online, people generally don't have to prove that they are that thing.
So what are the conclusions?
YouGov have a Labour member poll panel. They do that, and they don't make YouGov panel members prove with their Labour Party cards that they are Labour members, and that's also a self-selecting group.
So what are the conclusions?
So the conclusions are, the too long didn't read is that Labour members are massively in favour of Andy Burnham being the next leader of the Labour Party. While only a majority of members would like to see Keir stepping down. Andy Burnham followed by Ed Miliband, then Angela Rayner, and Wes Streeting off into the distance. He's a choice of sort of single digits numbers of Labour members for being first choice for the next leader of the Labour Party.
I may be wrong on this, but I seem to remember that in the beginnings of the 2015 Labour Party leadership election, Andy Burnham was also quite a way ahead on that, and we all know what happened then. I mean, do you think it's possible that these figures could change over the weeks, or do you think that they're so categoric that he's almost home and dry if he can win a seat?
Well, it's a very volatile group of voters, right? So Wes Streeting, in November last year, Wes Streeting was seen as, in a head-to-head, Wes Streeting versus Keir Starmer, if there was a membership election with just those two candidates as the options, would sort of slightly beat Keir Starmer in a membership election. As Wes's ambition has grown to the current day, his popularity with Labour members has decreased as he's sort of seen as being a sort of a plotter, being disloyal. Labour Party members are quite keen on sort of loyalty and not plotting. I think Andy Burnham has also had a knock in his favourability in our polling since last year, but he's starting from a much higher base. He was something like an 85% positive favourability with Labour members at some point last year, and as he sort of started making shapes around the time of the Labour Party conference, Labour members didn't like that very much, but he's now sort of a mere kind of plus 55% favourability rating amongst Labour members. So he's still sitting pretty.
And why does Angela Rayner figure in this? Because given that it's a sort of preferential choice voting system, as I understand it, a second place candidate in preferential voting can often pull through and win. Now, where does she stand?
So in a field that doesn't include Andy Burnham, she can do very well. If it did also include Ed Miliband, I think members would be pretty split between Angela Rayner and Ed Miliband. But in a Wes Streeting, Keir Starmer, Angela Rayner final three, which of course is a possibility if, say, Ed doesn't fancy it and the Makerfield by-election goes against Andy Burnham, or he's not allowed to stand, then you could have Angela Rayner as the next leader of the Labour Party, next Prime Minister. So she is a favourite of the soft left group of MPs and also of Labour Party members. She does very well. Not quite the favourability of Andy Burnham.
I don't bet, but if I did, I would put money on Angela Rayner, I have to say. Let's talk about Makerfield, because I think you've got some useful information on that constituency.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a bit of a weird one. So if you said, well, what does your election model say about Makerfield? We would say massive reform win. Almost 50% of the vote if there was a general election tomorrow. But if you add the Andy Burnham effect, things change quite rapidly. So as an example, we polled the Gorton and Denton by-election throughout the campaign, indicating a Green Party win to people who are commissioning polling. We then called 500 people back and just confirmed how they voted in the by-election. Then we said, if Andy Burnham was the candidate, or if the candidates were, and we read out the candidate names, substituted Angelica's name for Andy Burnham's name, how would you have voted? And things changed hugely. So amongst people who did vote Labour in the 2024 general election, 36% of Gorton and Denton Labour voters voted Labour in the by-election. If Andy Burnham was the candidate, that would become 65% of Labour voters. Amongst Green voters, 43% of Green voters told us they would not have voted Green in the by-election in Gorton and Denton. They would have voted for Andy Burnham as the Labour candidate. So two things going on, right? One is that Andy Burnham is a very familiar character in the Northwest. He's done very well in successive elections. His national popularity and local popularity is very strong. Secondly, all the reasons why you would you can not like the Labour, the direction of Labour. You can not like the Labour government, but you can vote for Andy Burnham as the Labour candidate because he is seen as the not Keir Starmer.
Well, maybe I've underestimated his personal vote then, because those figures are very, very stark, aren't they? Damien, thank you very much for joining us. That's Damien Lyons-Lowe, Chief Executive of Survation. Theo Bertram joins me now, Director of the Social Market Foundation think tank, who's also former advisor to both Tony Blair and Gordon Brown while each was Prime Minister. Theo, good evening to you. Where do you see things at the moment? Because we've heard from a sort of fairly left-wing MP, Andy MacDonald, as to how he thinks things are going to shake out. How do you think things will?
Well, hi, Ian. I mean, what a momentous day. I mean, really quite exceptional in the history of the Labour Party. I don't think anyone knows exactly how things are going to play out. As you've just been discussing with Damien, there's still a lot of uncertainty about how the votes will play out. But I think if you look at this from Starmer's perspective, the history of prime ministers, when you reach this point, is there's only one of two ways out. You either go into a contest, and very rarely do they win that. Major did in 95, as you'll know well, or they set a timetable for their departure. Now, I think the only question is Starmer going to set that timetable, or is he going to be resistant? And we don't know that at the moment. I think probably what would be best for the Labour Party at this point, and probably most likely, is some sort of contest. But who, how, when, and whether Starmer resists that or makes it an orderly transition, we won't know for another few weeks, I think.
Now, I said you worked for Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. I imagine, therefore, that you must have worked with Andy Burnham. What do you make of him? What do you make of him? Because in the 2015 contest, he flattered to deceive. He didn't really seem to get any momentum at all, and everyone thought he would probably be the most likely winner, but he just didn't perform. Why would this be any different?
Well, I knew Andy when he was a New Labour special advisor, and obviously he's been on a journey since then. And this won't be the first time if he gets through and he gets to stand in a leadership contest. Obviously, won't be the first time that he's done that. But I think what Starmer has shown is that communication really is an important part of being Prime Minister, especially when the country is in these difficult times. It isn't just that you need to be able to explain what's going on, but you need to be able to make an argument and win that argument. And I think while Andy and Angela, Rayner and Wes Streeting have different perspectives, different policies, come from different wings of the party, all of them are better at communicating and connecting with people than Starmer.
Would Andy Burnham be a better Prime Minister, though? Because you can lead a political party and you can make the best speeches, you can connect with people, but if you're not going to be a good Prime Minister, it's all for nothing, isn't it? And clearly at the moment, the electorate is crying out for somebody who they think will be better than Keir Starmer.
Well, I'd say two things there. The first is it is harder to be Prime Minister than it's ever been. I think whichever party you come from, wherever you stand, I think the constraints we face at a country are really deep and severe. So I think it's always a tough job. I think it's tougher now than anywhere, and you see that in the incumbents everywhere are losing. And I think the second thing I would say, and I think you would agree with this, is you can't always tell who's going to be a great Prime Minister at the point where you've selected them. And actually, it's only time that tells that. And I think, interestingly, both with Margaret Thatcher and with Tony Blair, who, whether you like either of them or neither of them, they were the most successful prime ministers in terms of how often they were re-elected. And both of them got stronger as they went on. But I think the characteristic that they both had in common was that they were willing not only to take on their backbenchers, but to disagree with public opinion and change public opinion. So I think we need someone who is capable of doing that. And I think that will be right at the forefront of this leadership election campaign, if it does turn into that, which I think is the most likely outcome.
Theo, thank you very much indeed. That's Theo Bertram, Director of the Social Market Foundation. Well, after the news, I'll be joined live in the studio by a Cabinet Minister who'll be giving me his thoughts on Andy Burnham's moves today, Wes Streeting's resignation, and whether Angela Rayner might be his party's next leader. It's 7:33 news headlines on LBC with Amelia Cox.
Andy Burnham will try to run for Parliament after the MP for Makerfield says he will stand down to trigger a by-election for him. Josh Simons says he believes the Greater Manchester Mayor can drive change. The announcement follows Wes Streeting's resignation from government, saying he had lost confidence in Sir Keir Starmer. But the former Health Secretary stopped short of triggering a Labour leadership contest. Number 10 says the Prime Minister will fight any challenge. And health officials say one young person has died and 2 others are being treated following an outbreak of meningitis in Reading. Earlier this year, thousands of students were vaccinated in Kent after 2 people died from the disease there. LBC weather turning drier overnight as clear spells develop. Some showers continuing in the far north, southwest and Northern Ireland. Lows of 1.
The LBC app. News your way. This is LBC.
For unbeatable prices on printer ink and toner, more people are switching to cartridgepeople.com. Like Max, whose kids have discovered printable colouring sheets. And now, there's no going back. And Jen, a business owner who wants printer cartridges so economical, she can print herself a pay rise. For unbeatable prices on printer ink and toner, switch to cartridgepeople.com. T's and C's apply. See online for our price promise.
Mr. and Little Miss are back in Happy Meal and they're off on a road trip. Your little one can go somewhere exciting with Little Miss Brave, laugh all the way there with Mr. Tickle, or make up an adventure all of their own. On this road trip, anything's possible. Some fun, some food, it's all inside this Happy Meal. Until the 8th of June from 11 a.m. Includes one pre-selected book or toy while stocks last, subject to availability.
May we have your attention? Introducing the Volkswagen May event. Get an extra £1,000 towards your finance deposit with Solutions PCP 7.9% APR representative across the range, including the amazing Golf, Tiguan, and all-electric ID3. Major. I said it was in May, right?
Yes.
It's the final weekend, ends the 18th of May. Visit your nearest Volkswagen retailer. You may just find the car you've been looking for.
Stop it.
Participating retailers. Excludes T-Roc ID bars and Golf GTI 50. ID3 from stock only. Indemnities may be required. Registered by 30th of August. Volkswagen Finance.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
7:36 on LBC. On Cross Question 8, Barry Gardner, Labour MP for Brent West, will be joining us. Emily Sheffield, political commentator and columnist for the London Standard. Paul Fleming, General Secretary of the Arts and Entertainment Trade Union Equity, a former Labour councillor. And Teresa Bischoff, political commentator. So we'll be taking your questions on all sorts of things, no doubt, after 8. Right, let's go to your calls before we talk to Douglas Alexander, the Scotland Secretary, who will be joining us in a moment. Let's go to Chris, who's in Wigan, which, by coincidence, is right next door to Makerfield, I believe. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Ian.
Hi, what would you like to say?
I think that Andy has every chance of being party leader, but he has got absolutely no chance of actually becoming a Member of Parliament. He needs to become a Member of Parliament, become party leader, but he's not going to get voted in up here. The electorate has massively rejected Labour. Out of 24 seats up for election in the local council elections, all 24 went to Reform. I'm one of the few people who voted for Labour up here, and this former heartland of Labour has destroyed. Andy has done brilliantly for Greater Manchester as a whole with his revolution of the B network, and his work for homeless people. Everything he's a fantastic mayor. Party is in such disarray. I don't think they'll ever get into power again. Not within the next couple of decades, at least. I think they'll lose if a general election is called, which won't be done for the next few years. But they won't. It's not going to be with Andy leading them. It won't be a very strong turnout for Labour, and they're going to be in the doldrums for the next few years.
But people keep telling me today, and we've just heard it from one of our guests there, that his popularity is so much that would counteract any negative feeling towards the Labour Party. I
think there's such a gap, a void between Andy and the actual Labour Party. I mean, for Labour to have blocked his candidacy for the by-election last year, I think was absolutely crazy. It showed Keir was weak, and that he feared the challenge from Andy. That Andy would be a great leader for this country because he's a great leader for us in the North West. He's a great leader for us in Greater Manchester. And his work doesn't just encompass Greater Manchester. He does work with other councils as well. But I just don't think that Labour has a part to play in politics going forward. And that, as a Labour voter, that really depresses me and saddens me. But the party's in such a disarray that I don't think even Andy could turn things back around.
Can you clear up something for me? I've had a text from Rebecca who says, politely, isn't it Ashton in Makerfield? I live near there. No one calls it just Makerfield. I think isn't it the constituency is an amalgam of two places which have Makerfield in the title?
It is Ashton in Makerfield, yes.
So you think he's got little hope of pulling through? And then, of course, he would have had to have resigned the mayoralty to stand in the by-election. So, I mean, he'd be in the wilderness, wouldn't he?
Well, I really think he would be, because I don't think there's a support for Labour in especially in Wigan, that there has been historically. And as I say, I'm a lifelong Labour voter. I think him, Andy and Wes would make a great team, because I think Wes is a future leader of the Labour Party. He's only similar age to me. He's a young man in the world of politics. I think he's he's possibly the only person in the cabinet who's shown any passion and strength. But I just don't think there's the support for Labour in the Northwest like there was even 2 years ago.
Chris, thank you very much indeed. That's Chris in Wigan there. Well, let's talk to a Cabinet Minister who always shows passion. Douglas Alexander joins me.
Good to see you, Ian.
Now, Douglas, I was thinking, well, what should my first question be?
Passion, middle-aged Scottish men, obviously.
Do we talk about Wes Streeting? Do we talk about Angela Rayner? Do we talk about Andy Burnham? I mean, how has it come to this?
Well, firstly, I'm in your hands. I'll answer whichever questions you want to ask to the best of my ability. The truth is, listen, it's been a really tough few days for the Labour Party. I've been in the Commons since the election results came through in Scotland, and it's been, within the Parliamentary Labour Party, a cauldron of sadness, anger, fear, pretty much every negative emotion that you can think of. And I understand that, because we've lost really good colleagues, not just in Scotland, but in Wales and in England as well. And I think that helps explain the headlines of the last few days and some of the twists and turns that no doubt you're wanting to ask about.
Well, let's start with Wes Streeting's resignation letter, because, it was, I think, an incredibly well-crafted letter in many ways. But it was absolutely scathing. The last couple of paragraphs about the Prime Minister, basically accusing him of not being loyal to colleagues, throwing them under the bus, not taking any dissent on board, not encouraging open party debates, said that there was where there should be vision, there's a vacuum. I mean, it doesn't get worse than that, does it?
Well, clearly the relationship had broken down, and Wes made a judgment that he couldn't, in clear conscience, I can't remember the exact phraseology he used, stay in the government. I think the Prime Minister's response to that letter was a good deal more conciliatory. But in terms of the vision of the Labour Party, on the back of our party cards, it says wealth, power and opportunity in the hands of the many and not the few. And in relation to his critique that there was drift instead of delivery, just look at what his own department announced this morning in terms of record falls in relation to waiting times in England. Look at what Rachel Reeves was able to indicate today when we got new numbers showing that in the first quarter of the year, we had the fastest growing economy in the G7. Now, of course, we know that living standards are really tough. Of course, we understand with the closure of the Straits of Hormuz, we're heading into even more turbulent economic waters. But the reality is, much as I admire Wes as a politician, and he has a great facility with language, as you know, the reality is the conduct of his own department defies even some of the critiques within the letter.
And if he was a sole resigner, and there weren't these 80 or 90 other MPs that have expressed a view that the Prime Minister should go, I think you could dismiss it in those terms. But he's not alone, is he? A lot of people think like this. And voters, they don't buy Keir Starmer either. He's got the lowest opinion poll ratings of any Prime Minister ever, worse than Liz Truss. There's no coming back from that, is there?
OK, so a couple of points. Firstly, in terms of policy, imagine for a second, just as a thought experiment, you have the Labour government of your dreams. I don't know, would that be Clement Attlee? Would that be Tony Blair's communication? Would that be, I don't know, Ernest Bevin's foreign policy? However wonderful a Labour government was, it couldn't undo in 19 months the work that had taken place and all the difficulties that had been experienced in the preceding 14 years. So I think there is a reasonable critique, which the public have made of us, of being impatient for change and waiting to feel the changes that we are working to deliver. We didn't get into this mess as a country overnight. We're not going to get out of this mess as a country overnight. But in addition to the fact that we have to drive forward policy change, we need to be an effective political and electoral force, and that involves a facility for taking the public with us, persuading them, and we need to do better and be better as a political force, as well as driving those policy changes.
Everything you've just said there was exactly what Keir Starmer and maybe you back in May 2025 was saying after the bad results then. nothing has changed. I mean, you keep saying we need to go further, faster. And
let me give you a couple of things
bolder.
that have changed. The fastest growing economy in the G7, and the fact that we're already driving down waiting times and waiting lists in England, the development of the NHS app, look at ambulance response times, the dashboard in relation to the health service, one of the critical measures for any government, are moving in the right direction. So in that sense, when you say nothing's changed, of course change hasn't come quickly enough. I'm not in denial as to the weight of public expectation and frankly the deep frustration with any incumbent government, including our government. But I think it's not actually accurate to say nothing's changed.
But, I mean, back in the Blair-Brown days, I mean, you were one of the people at the core of their election campaigns. I mean, it was partly your strategy that won those elections. So, I mean, you're not blind to the fact that the electorate aren't buying into Keir Starmer as a leader. People might have respect for him I think he's done rather well on foreign policy generally. Chagos accepted, but let's leave that to one side.
Not for tonight, Ian.
No, not for tonight. And I will give him credit for that, and I think the electorate give him credit for that. But he hasn't got that personality that Tony Blair always had as Prime Minister, that can get you through these tough times. And Tony Blair would sort of undertake a sort of masochism strategy. Well, Keir Starmer, he's just not got the personality. It's not his fault.
I remember the masochism strategy. I was there, and I also remember the 2001 election when I was coordinating the campaign. And you're right, Tony Blair was a uniquely gifted communicator. But with all due respect to Tony Blair, or indeed to Gordon Brown, who succeeded him, both of whom I worked very closely with. Indeed, I served in the cabinet with Andy Burnham, that no doubt we're going to talk about in the course of this evening. The reality is, what Keir Starmer did, against all expectation, frankly, including myself, I both nominated and supported Keir when he stood for the leadership of the Labour Party. Did I honestly believe when I nominated him that he would be able to do the work of John Smith, Neil Kinnock, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown in the space of 4 years? I genuinely didn't. And in that sense, Keir has already, against all expectations, redeemed Labour, frankly, not only from the horrors of Corbynism.
Reform UK did that, didn't they?
Sure, but also, if you look at the condition of the Labour Party in 2019, after all of the difficulties of Corbynism with anti-Semitism and all of the horrors that were involved in that chapter of Labour's history, he has consistently defied the odds and deserves a huge amount of gratitude and credit for the work that he did, not just for bringing us back to power, but the work that is already underway, as we've seen in the economy and the health service.
Do you want all your best players on the pitch? Because that's what a lot of Labour people think, and that's why they think that Andy Burnham should be allowed to stand in this by-election. Do you think he should
So as the Secretary of State for Scotland looking ahead to the World Cup, I want all of our best players on the pitch, and I hope that makes 11, and it would be quite nice to get out the qualifying rounds. But when you come to the substantive point, listen, Andy has a huge contribution to make and is making a huge contribution in Manchester at the moment. Number 10 have already indicated this evening that they are not seeking to block him from standing.
So it was a mistake to do it last time?
Well, I actually did some media interviews the last time explaining that I previously served on the National Executive Committee and I've actually fought 2 by-elections. So I think that was probably why I was asked to offer the explanation. And I remember at the time saying, this is about the moment and not the man, not least because Andy's a friend of mine and he's a hugely capable politician. But the reality is it's a political judgment ultimately that is reached by the National Executive Committee, and for all that it follows procedure and rules of the Labour Party rulebook, what those members of the NEC are charged to do is to reach a political judgment as to the best interests of the Labour Party overall. And they reached that judgment, those officers, however long, many months ago, 4 or 5 months ago. Number 10 has indicated this evening that they take a different view, and frankly I would expect that means Shabana as one of the members of the National Executive Committee along with Keir Starmer, because these are party processes, not government processes, that they will certainly not be seeking to block Andy, and I think honestly that is the right and responsible course.
But from a political point of view, what you're facing here is somebody that will be accused of feeling entitled to just walk into a seat and be selected and then automatically win it. Life isn't like that, is it?
So the great thing about parliamentary democracy is that ultimately the person who gets the last word is the public of the United Kingdom. And in that sense, if you're saying to me, is there an iota of complacency as the Labour Party contemplates a by-election? Absolutely not. And as I say that with some experience. having both lost a by-election back in 1995 and won a by-election in 1997. So the reality is we take nothing for granted, and I'm sure, given his political experience and knowledge, neither will Andy, because the reality is not only is there a step and a threshold of going to the National Executive Committee, you've then got to go to the constituency Labour Party and secure that selection. But if you are successful and are selected as a Labour candidate in a by-election, then you can take nothing for granted and you have to work for every vote.
But if you really wanted to end the chaos, you would block him standing in this by-election, wouldn't you? Because it's going to be the biggest political soap opera in recent history. It's going to get huge media coverage. Reform UK are going to throw everything they've got at it to try and beat him. And this would be, if it wasn't Andy Burnham walking in here, this by-election would be your worst political nightmare come true, wouldn't it? A majority of 5,500, absolutely classic Reform UK territory.
So listen, I know you too well, and I've got too much respect for LBC listeners and viewers, not to suggest that this isn't going to be a big deal. It's going to be a really big deal in terms of media scrutiny, coverage and everything else. That's why I've asked myself, even in the time since this has emerged, what is the responsibility of a cabinet minister in these circumstances? Respectfully, I'm not on the NEC. I don't get to make that judgment. I've been in the NEC in the past, but I'm not on it now. The reality is our responsibility is to evidence to the public that, as well as the day-to-day up and downs of politics and all of the scrutiny and headlines that will generate, that they can feel confident that there is a government focused on the work in hand. And that's why the kind of...
This by-election proves that it isn't, because let's do a bit of role play. Yep. You're knocking on my door in Makerfield, and I open the door and I say, Mr. Alexander, I've got a question for you. Mm-hmm. This by-election is costing the British taxpayer £120,000. How can you justify that to me? That money could be spent on 4 nurses.
Because I think democracy ultimately is worth whatever cost.
Plus 5 million for the Manchester mayoral by-election.
Whatever the cost to the public exchequer. I think we... who was it who said, democracy is better than any of the alternatives? The reality is it's always an option for the public to complain about the cost of, listen, I've just been on doorsteps, thousands of doorsteps in the recent months in Scotland, and the public, in their wisdom, have the capacity to complain about pretty much every aspect of public expenditure. Too much is being spent.
And I hear it every evening on here too.
I'm sure you do. And in that sense, the public are always right, but sometimes the public fundamentally contradict each other, and that's the nature of a parliamentary democracy. So the reality is there is always costs involved in a parliamentary democracy, but I think in that circumstance, you have to make the case respectfully and reasonably that actually it's a small price to pay to live in a parliamentary democracy where, as I say, ultimately the public get the final word.
Do you think another price to pay ought to be Anna Sarwar's resignation? Because, if Keir Starmer does stay as Prime Minister, how can he possibly stay as leader of the Labour Party in Scotland?
Because he is accountable to the members of the Scottish Labour Party. There's a meeting of the Scottish Executive taking place on Saturday. I very much hope and believe that Anas will continue. He's indicated that in role. I think he is a gifted and talented politician, but we got results that none of us wanted. As a consequence of that, Anas has already said, my responsibility is to hold the party together, actually somewhat echoing the remarks that we've seen from Downing Street this evening. Listen, these are really difficult days for the Labour Party. The results were brutal and devastating for many of us in every part of Great Britain. There's no point in pretending that that's other than the case. So what's the responsibility of leadership? It is to hold the party together while you take the time to figure out why the judgment has been cast upon you that the electorate have made.
Douglas Alexander, thank you very much for coming in. You're listening to LBC. It's 7:53.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Is it good news if there's a leadership challenge to Sir Keir Starmer?
It will be a perfect thing to say, let's leave Starmer in place. He's the devil you know. Wes Streeting, I think, is just a sideshow.
Let's bring to the conversation Luke Akehurst. Now, Luke is a Labour MP. He's also an ally and a friend of Wes Streeting and joins me now.
My concern is that Wes could start the ball rolling on a leadership contest where the actual result, once you throw it out to the members, would be a Prime Minister that was significantly to the left of Keir Starmer.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Feel every pass and every goal. Discover the next generation of televisions at John Lewis. Experience the full clarity of the latest RGB and OLED technology. Brought to you by some of the world's best brands. Price matched against 25 leading retailers with a 5-year guarantee on all TVs. Your best view of every game is available right now at John Lewis. It's football upgraded. T's and C's and exclusions apply. See johnlewis.com for details.
Check your retirement savings are on track with PensionBee's easy-to-use app. Because when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. When investing, your capital is at risk.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group Clinics. With over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
You've packed enough suitcases to know quality when you see it. Well, Saga Travel Insurance has been named a Which Best Buy. And now get 20% off when you buy before the 11th of June. Search Saga Travel Insurance for a quote today. New policies only. Standard & Plus are Which Best Buys May 2025. Terms and conditions apply. Over 50s only.
Now with Lidl Plus, collect points that you can turn into possibilities. Pepper abilities, pasta abilities, burrata abilities, kayak abilities. So collect and spend your Lidl Plus points on hundreds of rewards or money off coupons. Lidl, more to value. Exclusions apply for T's and C's. Lidl.co.uk/LPTV 18+ GB only.
For unbeatable prices on printer ink and toner, more people are switching to cartridgepeople.com. Like Max, whose kids have discovered printable colouring sheets. And now, there's no going back. And Jen, a business owner who wants printer cartridges so economical, she can print herself a pay rise. For unbeatable prices on printer ink and toner, switch to cartridgepeople.com. T's and C's apply. See online for our price promise.
Iain Dale on LBC.
7:55. Well, the former Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner says she's resolved her tax affairs with HMRC following an investigation, and she's settled a £40,000 unpaid stamp duty bill. She said she'd been, quotes, exonerated of the accusation that she had deliberately sought to avoid tax in a statement that she made this morning. Well, let's get more on this with the managing partner of the independent tax advisory company Forbes Dawson. His name, believe it or not, is Andrew Marr. I do know that we haven't got the actual Andrew Marr, but we've got this actual Andrew Marr on. Andrew, welcome to the programme. Now, you take some issue with this conclusion that Angela Rayner has drawn, don't you?
Well, she hasn't actually been exonerated because she's paid the wrong SDLT and she hasn't defended it, so she's ultimately had to pay more SDLT than she originally declared.
But she's been exonerated of deliberately seeking to avoid tax.
Well, I think strictly that's true because she didn't. I don't think there's a strong suggestion that she knew that she absolutely knew that she was paying the wrong amount of tax and she purposely paid the lower amount. I think the surprising thing is she's got away with no penalties at all. She was supposed, the question is here, was she careless? And if she's careless, the default position is that she would have got a 30% penalty. Sometimes it could have been made down to 15% if she was cooperating. But it's quite unusual. I think if the published reports are correct, it does seem quite strange that she hasn't had any penalty at all.
So you don't think she's being treated in the same way that an ordinary member of the public would have been treated?
It doesn't look like that. No, it doesn't look like that. We field a lot of questions from HMRC about people who have, where the issue is a lot more grey, and they've been reasonable in putting forward a position, and they've, in many cases, they've taken a lot of detailed advice, which Angela Rayner took no advice, even when they've taken.
Well, no, that's not true. She did take advice, and she says she took the advice that she was given.
Well, that's not what I've seen. As I say, all I'm saying is what I've seen in the papers. I thought the point was that she was told about some sorry, I think I know what you're talking about. So originally, I think the point is that she was told by her conveyancers to take specialist STLT advice, apparently on 2 occasions, because they said, look, we're not experts about this. And I think the trust might have been mentioned, which was the key point, and she didn't take that advice. Now, what she did do, I understand, is she, subsequent to all this coming out, she did sort of find somebody who gave a contrary view, which I think was some kind of fairly detailed trust point about the nature of the trust it was. And so there was an argument that, I think it was obviously ultimately unsuccessful because they didn't, she still paid the tax. I am speculating here a bit, but, maybe she got that.
I think the big point about this is that given what you've said there, if she thinks that she can put all of this right behind her and it is the line can be drawn under it, I think the fact that you're on this programme now, your company emailed us earlier in the day, and frankly, I thought it'd be quite a wheeze to get someone called Andrew Marr on the programme to talk about it. But the points that you've made show that she won't be able to escape this any more scrutiny of this if she does indeed stand for the leadership. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. That's Andrew Marr, managing partner of the tax advisory company Forbes Dawson. Right, coming up in a moment, it is Thursday's Cross Question. We have with us in the studio Barry Gardner, Labour MP for Brent West, Emily Sheffield, political commentator and columnist for the London Standard, Paul Fleming, General Secretary of the Arts and Entertainment Trade Union Equity. He's also a former Labour councillor, and Teresa Bischoff, a political commentator. They'll be here to take your calls. We've cleared the switchboard, but we didn't manage to take many calls in the hour, as you will have no doubt noticed, but after 9 o'clock it is going to be your calls all the way, so you'll have an opportunity to have your say then. But if you'd like to ask our panel a question, call us up now on 0345 6060 973. And of course, do watch us on Global Player, on the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, LBC understands Sir Keir Starmer will not use his position on Labour's ruling body to block Andy Burnham from standing to be an MP. The Mayor of Greater Manchester has confirmed he'll request permission to stand in a by-election. It's after the MP for Makerfield, Josh Simons, stepped down. Labour MP Andy MacDonald's told LBC Andy Burnham has many hills to climb, though.
You cannot take the vote for granted. Makerfield was not a huge majority. If Andy Burnham is going to be selected to fight the seat, he's got to convince the people of Makerfield that he deserves their support. And then once in, of course, his next electorate is the Parliamentary Labour Party, and then onwards the members of the Labour Party. So nothing's a given.
It follows Wes Streeting's resignation from government earlier. The former Health Secretary says he's lost confidence in the Prime Minister. One young person's died and 2 others are being treated following an outbreak of meningitis in Reading. The UK Health Security Agency says the risk to the wider public is low. And the Kings visited North London to show solidarity with the area's Jewish community after last month's terror attack. 2 men were stabbed in Golders Green last month. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 47 points at 10,372. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather turning drier overnight as clear spells develop. Some showers continuing in the far north, southwest and Northern Ireland. A low of 1. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
Taking antibiotics when you don't need them puts you and your family at risk of a longer and more severe illness. Always take your doctor's advice. Search NHS antibiotics.
You saw me, walking along the beach. You watched me turn round the headland, and the tide, it cut me off. The rocks were wet, too wet to climb, so I panicked. But you didn't. You dialed 999 and asked for the Coast Guard.
Coast Guard.
And I just want to say, whoever you are, thank you.
In an emergency at the coast, call 999 and ask for the Coast Guard.
I'm a real snack monster. But Mum and Dad says all that munching isn't good for me. Around half the sugar we eat comes from unhealthy snacks and sugary drinks. If you want to change from a snack monster to a snack star, search Change for Life for loads of healthy snacking ideas.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening and welcome to Thursday's Cross Question. It's 4 minutes past 8. You are listening to LBC. If you'd like to ask our panel a question, you know what to do. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call, or you can WhatsApp a question on that number. You can text 84850. We'd love you to watch us on Global Player, the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel. And let me introduce my panel to you. To my left, Teresa Bischoff is a political commentator. Next to her is Paul Fleming, General Secretary of the Arts and Entertainment Trade Union Equity, and he's also a former Labour councillor. It's first time on the show. Welcome. Emily Sheffield is next to me, an absolute veteran of the show. Oh, you're too young to be called a veteran, aren't you? Political commentator and columnist for the London Standard. And next to her, everybody's favourite Labour MP, Barry Gardner, Labour MP for, well, apart from Keir Starmer, that is, Labour MP for Brent West. We're going to have a little bit of fun with Barry in this hour, as you'll see in just a moment. So we're looking forward to your questions here on Cross Question.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
In fact, let's have that fun right now, shall we? Because, Barry, you were sitting behind Keir Starmer. Was it yesterday or the day before? I can't remember. Yesterday.
Speech, yes.
And brandishing in your lap a book by Paul Holden called The Fraud. Now,
your use of the English language is not the same as mine. I would never say I was brandishing it. It happened to be on my lap.
Yeah, well, it could not have been, though.
And well,
I mean, had you chosen not to bring it into the chamber?
No, the reason it was in the chamber is because when there's the King's Speech, as you know, you have to make sure of your seat. And so MPs tend to go in about half an hour early. It's rather like PMQs, only a bit more so. And so I'm reading the book at the moment, and I took it in with me.
A book which is very anti-Keir Starmer, it should be said.
Well, of course, I'm reading it, so I'm discovering that as I read it. But actually, it's an extremely well-documented, by a very fine investigative journalist, account of Labour Together and the way in which Keir Starmer took control of the Labour Party and ultimately became
So it was
Prime
all
Minister.
perfectly innocent? And you didn't want it to be shown at all on television?
I am perfectly innocent, as you know.
I'm just seeing if your nose is growing a little bit long.
No.
Okay. Right, end of your torture. Let's go to the first question. It's from Richard in Finsbury Park. Hello, Richard.
Hello, Ian. Hello, panel. Do people agree with me that possibly this by-election, the Makerfield by-election, will end up being almost like a mini referendum on stopping reform? Because even if you refer back to what Barry's just said, at one point people thought Keir Starmer was the saviour of the left. It's now clear, I would contend, that the only person who can basically save the left electorally is Andy Burnham. So everybody on the left will have an incentive in this by-election to support Burnham. And I'm pretty sure people like Carol Vorderman, who organised all the tactical voting at the last election, will be simply saying, stop reform, stop reform.
So by that logic, would you call on the Green Party to stand down their candidate in this seat?
Well, I just the thing with that, Ian, is if they do that, then there's a precedent for the Conservatives to stand down, and I don't think it needs to be that. It doesn't need to be that open, does it?
So, will the Makerfield by-election be a referendum on Labour? That's essentially what Richard is asking. Teresa Bischoff.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It can be. I think it probably will be, but it could hugely backfire. Of course, we mentioned Labour Together. The candidate that decided to stand down today is formerly of Labour Together, so quite an interesting coalition between Josh Simons and Andy Burnham there. I certainly think it will be interpreted as such, but as I say, it could go either way, I think.
I mean, you look at the demographics of the seat, you look at the recent elections there. I mean, if I was Andy Burnham, I'd be thinking, well, this is a very, very big risk.
It is indeed. And of course, the other element there is that we'll have mayoral elections as well. And we've seen in the recent locals reform do fairly well in that patch. So whether that mayoral election will actually end up causing more trouble than an Andy Burnham in Westminster will make up for remains to be seen.
OK, Paul Fleming.
I mean, it's self-evidently a referendum on Keir Starmer. It's going to be very bizarre having a Labour candidate saying, I'm the way to stop Keir Starmer, when that has been the line
endorsed by the Labour Party.
Endorsed by the Labour Party. When that's been the line of both Reform and the Greens through the local elections. But yeah, I mean, look, if an awful lot of the hype around Andy Burnham is surrounding his personal popularity, but also the policy programme he's had in Greater Manchester, if that can't beat Reform, then what can? Frankly, if Andy Burnham can't win that by-election, the Labour Party has much bigger problems than the leadership of Andy Burnham. So, I mean, I think there are obviously reasons to be sceptical and concerned, but I think it's I think it's a pretty big risk. And he's been very bold in not having a Labour MP with a big majority stand down, because this is his point, that the Labour Party, as the caller said, not the Labour movement or the left, but the Labour Party does have an existential question to which Andy Burnham believes he has the answers. And frankly, if he was just standing somewhere that everybody thought he was going to win automatically, that wouldn't really make the point.
You're sounding slightly sceptical, as if you think he does have the answers.
No, I think that whatever he's got to make a pitch as leader of the Labour Party, because this whole to-do isn't about personalities or comms, it's about the material reality of a policy programme. Now, what he's done as Mayor of Manchester in terms of investment and growth on a local level is very impressive. He now needs to reach out to the unions, reach out to working people all over the country and say, well, this is the plan for change, and convince the Labour Party the Labour Party MPs for a start, and the National Executive that that's the right way to go. Do I think he has the answers? I think there's very serious potential there, but I think he has to make the case, and I don't think anybody would think it should be an automatic coronation.
Emily Sheffield, as the token righty on the panel this evening, I exclude myself. What do you make of this? And do you think that this is such a big risk for Andy Burnham that it doesn't show good judgment that he's even going to go for this?
Well, it's a huge risk in one way, in that he could get humiliated at the by-election. But as I understand it, we were discussing this in the room beforehand, he can stand at the by-election and if he loses, go back to his mayoral role.
No, he can't.
Oh, he can't?
No, he has to resign the mayoralty. And that's,
okay, so yes.
You not only have the taxpayer funding a by-election,
beforehand.
you have a by-election cost of around 120,000, and then you have a 5 million cost for the Manchester mayoral by-election, which in theory could be the same day, I suppose.
Got you. Okay, so yes, so I changed it. It's a huge risk for Andy Burnham. Will this by-election be a referendum on Labour? Well, it's up to Andy Burnham to stop it being a referendum on Labour, because if it's a referendum on Labour, they will lose and Reform or the Greens will win. He has to make it, just as you were saying, he has to make it about him, I'm afraid, becoming leader of the party. For me, that's the only way he can get through this by-election and win. He's going to say, if you vote for me, I have got a plan for Britain. I have got a plan for Makerfield. I have a plan for Manchester. Here's all my experience. I'm going to take it to Westminster and I am going to fix the country. If he just goes on, oh, make me your local MP, it's going to be a referendum on Labour. That would be my calculation of what the voters might be thinking, because you've got to think what Reform's argument's is going to be, look at the mess. They can't run the country. And look what the Tories did. So you've got to vote for us. And the Greens will be doing the same thing. And the Greens, by the way, many of their economic arguments are not that far from Andy Burnham's. So this is going to have to come back to his leadership abilities plus his plan for the UK.
And if I can, apologize, I can just add to that. I agree. I do think there needs to be clarity and honesty with his intentions. And I think there needs to be an explicit explanation on how he is going to transfer his skills from the mayoralty on the national scale, because we see all this polling that's very positive about Andy Burnham. But of course, there's a different level of scrutiny on him. He's responsible for Manchester. Some of these other contestants, I think you can call them that, are responsible for very different briefs that have faced more national scrutiny. And so explaining exactly how he is going to translate that experience, not just onto being an MP, but onto being the PM.
Okay. And just, one very minor, can I just make one terribly minor point, is that, well, it's not, actually, I think it's a very important point. Keir Starmer was elected on a manifesto. So he can't rip that manifesto up. because then he would have to call an election. So he's got this very difficult balancing act.
A mere technicality.
I know, a mere technicality, but that is going to come up because, is it in his head that if I win the leadership and I become Prime Minister, is my plan then to call an election shortly afterwards and set a whole new manifesto?
Well, I think that would be one way to guarantee losing the leadership election. Barry Gardner.
Just to Theresa's point, of course, he was a minister previously, a Secretary of State previously under Blair and Brown, and so he does have that other experience. I said the last time he wanted to stand that he should be allowed to, and I think he's a class politician, and it would be great to have him back in Westminster. But there are many people in the Labour Party who have the skills and the experience to lead the party. It doesn't all depend on Andy Burnham. And I think we're in danger of sort of just getting blinded by this idea. I would say never, ever, ever take the electorate for granted. And the trouble with this is it looks as if the difficulty is getting the Labour Party and the NEC to roll out the red carpet and allow him to stand. I actually think if they did roll out the red carpet to get him to stand, there is that little matter of the electorate of Makerfield who will perhaps say, well, contrary to what you were saying, Emily, not you need to sell yourself to us as the future leader of the country, but why are you using us for your own political purposes? We want an MP who's going to actually deliver for us here in Makerfield. And so I think there's that side to this as well. And, looking at what the opposition parties might do, you will remember, Ian, when Martin Bell stood as an independent, and everybody stood back and said, the opposition parties might say, let's coalesce around one person, an independent, to show that you can't take the electorate for granted. I think this is much, much more complicated than people are thinking. And the key issue here is that for as long as this is paying out, and even if he were allowed to stand tomorrow and it all kicked off in the speediest way possible, we're talking 2 months. That's 2 months when, in effect, the country's unstable.
Well, no, to be fair,
instability is built in at the moment.
Josh Simons has already resigned, so therefore the by-election could be called on Monday for 3 weeks hence. So it could be sort of beginning of June. But, then the Labour selection would have to be held literally at the end of next week.
Look, I think 3 weeks, 4 weeks is an extraordinarily optimistic time frame. As I say, I'd love to see Andy back in Parliament, but I don't think that we should simply think that because there is now a by-election opportunity, this is a done deal. And what we have to consider is that for as long as the Labour leadership is up for grabs, and it's clear that at the moment it is, we have Wes Streeting putting his hat into the ring. Who knows whether this week or next week he'll get the numbers? Who knows if somebody else will step into the ring? This is not good for the country, because the instability is now built in for as long as this goes on. But that's why I think it's really important that the Prime Minister says, I am going to stand aside, I'm going to let a contest take place, and this is the time frame, a short time frame, that we're now going to get this done in.
And of all the names that have been touted so far, you might want to throw one or two others into the mix, I don't know. But who are you going to back?
I will wait and see who's got the guts to. No, I will.
No, I asked him the same.
Look, absolutely straight. I will wait to see who's got the guts to do it. Right? Credit to Wes Streeting. He's not my favourite candidate, of course, because Wes I see as being a continuation of Starmer, not a change. And what the electorate said to us last week was, hey, you guys need to change. And we've got to deliver that transformation. So I want somebody who's coming in with policies that are going to do that. Now, who might do it? Okay, you could see that either Angie Rayner, Ed Miliband are potential, names in the frame. They've been mentioned very fully in the past 24 hours. Angie's now got her, her tax affairs sorted out with HMRC. So highly likely that there might be something going on there. I actually had a bet 20 years ago that Yvette Cooper would be our first woman Prime Minister for the Labour Party.
No chance.
I don't think so actually anymore. But I had a bet
I'm getting that you don't. So could I just ask one question just to clear this up? Because I mean the original question was, will this be a by-election, be a referendum on Labour? It seems to me like you're saying Andy Burnham's going to take too long. We need this to happen much faster. So effectively, are you actually wanting to rule Andy Burnham out?
No, absolutely not. I think it's important. It's really important that Andy Burnham is in the mix here.
Right.
He brings something special to this contest.
So the reality of what is going to happen now is that we're going to have a by-election, which is not going to be good for Labour, let's face it. This is carrying on this disaster for weeks.
It would be.
But maybe not. But what I'm saying is the headlines are now going to be dominated, right, by a very messy by-election, probably. Then we're going to have a messy leadership election. I mean, my point is this, for Labour, I'd say this is pretty... I don't know what anyone else thinks, but this feels pretty disastrous.
But hey, I mean, if you compare this with the absolute chaos that we went through with 5 Conservative Prime Ministers.
It's the same kind of chaos, and the electorate they're viewing it in that way.
The interesting thing, though, is I think the electorate are being told to view it in that way.
But by whom? By the wicked right-wing media.
You've never heard me call you wicked or right-wing. Well, maybe right-wing.
But I think the point is Labour said, we won't do the same. Within 2 years... We're not even at 2 years yet. It's not July. Was it the 24th? 4th. We're not even there yet.
Right.
So...
Well, we've got many more questions to come, so let's go to a rather late break. It's 21 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
The following is from TfL.
I got loads of flowers the other day and messages from people I didn't even know. My mates spelled out my name in tea lights, and my mum hung my favourite footy shirt on the railings next to the lamppost where I got killed by a nice lady, just someone who thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
At John Lewis Money, we know your home is more than an address. It's the sunlight pouring in. Well, sometimes. The coffee on tap and the best spot on the sofa. It's why our home insurance is thoughtfully designed with 3 levels of flexible cover for the home you've created. Because when you notice the details, you notice the difference. Search John Lewis Money. Terms and exclusions apply. John Lewis Finance Limited is authorised for insurance distribution and credit broking by the Financial Conduct Authority.
From countryside escapes to seaside breaks, and plenty of open roads in between, there's a Mazda for every kind of summer. Get 0% APR on selected models when ordered by the 30th of June, and keep your mind on the really important stuff, like trying to eat that ice cream before it melts. Search Mazda. Available on PCP when financed by Mazda Financial Services by the 30th of September 2026. Indemnities may be required. Terms apply. See website.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
23 minutes past 8 is the time on LBC. We have with us Teresa Bischoff, political commentator, Paul Fleming, General Secretary of the Equity Trade Union, Emily Sheffield, political commentator, and Barry Gardner, Labour MP for Brent West. We have a text question from Janie. Economic growth is up despite the war in Iran. NHS waiting lists are down despite all the bizarre hatred he faces. Isn't Keir Starmer doing quite a good job? Well, we've never had that kind of question on the programme before. Paul Fleming, I mean, she's got a point, though, because, I mean, there are other things that Keir Starmer keeps pointing to that are going right. Do you think he's doing a good job?
No. And neither do people who were voting in the local elections last week, and moreover in Scotland and particularly in Wales. But I think full credit to the Labour government. They have done they committed to things in the manifesto which were really good. The Employment Rights Act, the Renters Act. This stuff is having an impact, and that can't be taken away from them. But it's not fast enough, and it's not deep enough. And the point that was made earlier about
isn't that a bit facile though? I mean, they've achieved it, but they haven't done it quickly enough.
No, I think that's absolutely the point. I mean, I think you can also point at Keir Starmer's equivocation over various elements of the manifesto that haven't been implemented. The largest wave of insourcing in a generation hasn't yet happened. The Employment Rights Act, good as it was, filled with compromises. I mean, this is not about a new manifesto or a new direction. This isn't about the party's direction not working. It's about it not being ambitious and fast enough. And Keir Starmer had the opportunity on Friday, had the opportunity over the weekend, and on Monday to set out, this is what I'm doing differently. This is how I'm going to deliver this differently. This is my new Broadchurch cabinet. He could have been out there welcoming Andy Burnham into Parliament during the Gorton and Denton by-election, saying he's going to be the Chancellor of the Exchequer because of Manchester economics, which is fundamentally what the Labour manifesto in 24 is all about, big investment to deliver growth. But he didn't do that. This is a man, I spend a lot of time at Scunthorpe. It's a man who can't even say, I'm going to nationalise British Steel without the qualification of, I'm going to put a public interest test on it. That sums up the problem.
Process.
It's process. And that, I think, is the issue. It's not the policies. The direction the government is going in a better direction than it was before. But I think the Labour Party, and Keir Starmer in particular, has to be held to account for how quickly and effectively he's delivering that manifesto. And if he'd done more, the growth would be significantly better, and people would feel that change in their pockets. And my neighbours don't feel that. My members don't feel that.
Barry?
Yeah, look, I agree with Paul. The fact is, in response to our caller, we're not winning over the electorate, and we have to have a leader that can do that. Now, that's partly about his deafness to tone.
So that rules Ed Miliband out then, doesn't it? Because he lost the 2015 election.
He did, yeah. But policies. I think if you look at the good policies that Paul mentioned, like the Workers' Act, like the renters' reform, then you look and say, well, what's happened to commonhold? Leasehold reform was in the King's Speech, but the commonhold element of that was somehow just left off when it was talked about. If you look at the words that are most frequent in the King's Speech, they are, my government will continue to. That is not transformation. That is not getting away from the politics of the status quo. That is the politics of the status quo. My government will continue to. And I think that's the problem. We need something that is a disruption to get that wholesale change of power and wealth in this country.
But how do you do that? As Emily says, you can't just junk the 2024 manifesto.
No, you go further than it. You see, if you go to that manifesto, there are many things that were in there, like commonhold, which we're still to deliver. And yeah, let's get on. Let's do them.
There were many things in that manifesto that they promised not to do, which was tax workers. They then tax workers. They did it sneakily via business. They promised business they weren't going to hit business. They hit business. Well, they promised they were going to prioritise growth. They did anything but. They said we were not going to rejoin the European Union, but apparently we are.
In the rest of the G7.
It's anemic, and by next month or 2 months' time, it could have dropped again. I mean,
and the question is growth for whom? That's the truth. Growth is a figure, but what it doesn't talk to is a redistribution of wealth. And when they've dragged their feet over the two-child benefit cap, when the Labour Party, the complete cock-up over the winter fuel allowance for pensioners, which was a really symbolic moment of the Labour Party just not getting the temperature right. Actually, this isn't about a new manifesto. This is about better government, a more inclusive, Broadchurch Labour Party, which is what's won in Wales for 100 years, implementing what it promised in 2024. We were promised a single worker status in 2024. We were promised further reforms on leasehold in 2024. We were promised the biggest insourcing in a generation in 2024. These aren't new ideas. These are ideas that have a mandate that Keir Starmer's not brave enough to implement.
But they are less than 2 years into a 5-year term. You could surely not have expected them to do everything in the first 2 years.
So why has the electorate given us such a huge kicking? If you were right, Iain, and the electorate were thinking, well, you know what, they had a pretty good manifesto, we should probably give them the full 5 years to get it done, we wouldn't have seen what we've seen.
I'll tell you why. It's because there's a Prime Minister who's incapable of selling anything to the electorate. And secondly, that almost as soon as the election was over, when he had promised to be different from the Tories, he was taking free seats and glasses, and the winter fuel allowance thing wasn't in the manifesto. That's why he didn't have a honeymoon.
He lost it straight away.
Yeah, exactly right.
And people made their decision about him, and they haven't changed it. I absolutely agree with you, right?
Should we quit there while we agree? Because we haven't heard from Theresa yet.
I think the problem actually runs a bit more deeply than glasses and suits. I think what we've seen is a fairly disjointed strategy, especially when it comes to things like growth. On the one hand, the Nix policy. On the other hand, the employment rights bill. They're also not really controlling for the fact that AI is already taking people's jobs. Yes, we've seen some growth, but it's probably quite fickle, and it's probably not going to last for that much longer. B, people aren't feeling better off in their day-to-day lives. And I think it is this sort of disjointed policy program that means voters are just a little bit confused about how exactly they're benefiting from this program, firstly. And secondly, as you mentioned, they didn't have a honeymoon phase because very early on they alienated some key constituencies with the winter fuel bill, but also, they'd spend months and months buttering up business communities up and down the country.
And they did employers NIC. Yeah.
The first budget, immediately,
Crazy.
All of that progress that I think the party did really, really well
and raised the minimum wage. So businesses really were just hit on every level.
But that was built in because they knew that.
Yes, but that was anti-growth. That was anti-growth.
But they knew.
Yes, but they didn't know they were going to get the NI.
That's the point, and that's why we should be rolling back on the NIC.
And they went much further. They went much further than business had been, really was a shock. And I think there's this sort of, as you say, he doesn't know how to communicate it, but it's about building your argument before you just fling something out. And that was the big problem with the pensioner
the biggest thing is that they frittered away all of the goodwill that there was, even from people who didn't support them in the election. I think everybody thought, well, OK, it's a new start. We wish them well. And if the Prime Minister does well, we all do well. But that went within weeks. Right. Sergio says, Iain, I think you and your panel should find a real job and stop chatting like people gossiping while the country is trying to go ahead and Starmer is doing his job. I think I've got a real job. We've all got real jobs, haven't we?
Are we not workers?
Apparently not. 8:31 is the time on LBC. Daryl Jackson is here with the LBC News headlines.
LBC understands Sir Keir Starmer will not use his position on Labour's ruling body to block Andy Burnham from standing to be an MP. The Mayor of Greater Manchester has confirmed he'll request permission to stand in a by-election after the MP for Makerfield, Josh Simons, stepped down. Well, it follows Wes Streeting's resignation from government earlier. The former Health Secretary says he's lost confidence in the Prime Minister. One young person's died and 2 people are being treated after cases of meningitis in Reading. Close contacts of those affected are being offered antibiotics as a precaution. LBC weather turning drier overnight as clear spells develop. Some showers continuing in the far north, southwest and Northern Ireland. A low of 1 degree.
This is LBC.
For unbeatable prices on printer ink and toner, more people are switching to cartridgepeople.com. Like Max, whose kids have discovered printable colouring sheets. And now, there's no going back. And Jen, a business owner who wants printer cartridges so economical, she can print herself a pay rise. For unbeatable prices on printer ink and toner, switch to cartridgepeople.com. T's and C's apply. See online for our price promise.
Get your own UK-based account manager, a beekeeper, for support with Pension Bee. Because when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. When investing, your capital is at risk.
I'm in the kitchen with Charlie Bigham. So what have we got here, Charlie? My brand new pan-fried pad thai noodles.
Noodles? But you're Mr. Fish Pie guy.
Guilty. And while ovens rule at roasting,
the pan is king of noodling.
Whether it's pad thai, yakisoba or laksa, finding that perfect texture is a bottomless noodle rabbit hole.
But all I have to do is stir it in the pan for 6 minutes, right?
Bingo! Try the new Charlie Bigham's Asian pan-fried noodle range. Handmade in my kitchen.
Pan-fried in yours.
You've packed enough suitcases to know quality when you see it. Well, Saga Travel Insurance has been named a Which Best Buy. And now get 20% off when you buy before the 11th of June. Search Saga Travel Insurance for a quote today. New policies only. Standard and Plus are Which Best Buys May 2025. Terms and conditions apply. Over 50s only.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's 8:34 on LBC. We have with us on the panel Teresa Bischoff, political commentator, Paul Fleming, General Secretary of the Trade Union Equity, former Labour councillor, Emily Sheffield, political commentator and columnist for the London Standard. Is that still going?
No, I write more for the Independent now.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
We'll update our records. And Barry Gardner, Labour MP for Brent West. Jamie in York wants to know, do you think Starmer will do more Island of Strangers stuff to try and woo reform voters? Right, quick answers on this one. Teresa, let's start with you.
I'm not sure he's got that much more time left to do it. And if he does, I think the elections last week, the months preceding the elections, I think that was the course they were trying to chart. I would say the elections were an indictment that wasn't quite working out for them.
I mean, is it possible for them to overtly try to woo reform voters who... Because I've always thought if people defect from one party to another, whether they're elected politicians or voters, they will still want to go with the choice that they've made because they won't want to go back on it because they'll lose face with their friends. So you have to give them an election to do it and then try and win them back afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I think it's quite difficult because, as we've seen, voters have been less, I guess, ideological than we've seen in recent years. We've had lots of debates on whether the two-party system is dead. I think voters are just so desperate to feel change in their lives that they are not so bothered by party colors anymore. But they need to be told how their lives are going to improve with the policies that the various parties are putting forward.
Paul?
I mean, I don't think Keir Starmer's... Well, I mean, who knows what's going on in Keir Starmer's head at the minute? I mean, the last 48 hours have been slightly surreal, so I don't know whether he's going to be making those sorts of comments or others. I think the point about winning reform voters is an interesting one, because if you look at... so if you take the Runcorn by-election, their classic reform win, but in a by-election with a low turnout. You look at the Caerphilly...
By 6 votes.
By 6 votes. But you look at the Caerphilly by-election for the Senedd in Wales, an increase in turnout of 10%. You look at the turnout in Gorton and Denton, the result very similar. In those instances, progressive parties are winning. All the indications suggest that Labour is losing votes to the Greens, and that may well mean that they end up with a seat that goes reform. They're not really the reform voters are should be wooed and should be spoken to. There's a lot of people very frustrated with the economic system, and we should be looking for converts, not heretics in politics, is my opinion. But ultimately, it's not a strategy that works. And Keir Starmer has pursued this strategy for 2 years, and it's not working.
What you're saying is that the Greens could do to Labour what Reform have done to the Conservatives.
Even more extreme, and indeed Plaid and the SNP elsewhere, by taking votes away, you are allowing other parties through the middle. And actually, an awful lot of people, in the borough where I am, where I was a Labour councillor, there are lots of my colleagues who are now in the Green Party who have won election as Green councillors in the election. These are people who are instinctively part of the Labour movement and believe fundamentally in what the Labour Party was founded on. But we've veered quite a way away from that by now.
Barry?
No, I don't think he is. I think he's learned his lesson, and not to sort of pursue the electorate down a right-wing rabbit hole. The Island of Strangers speech was a mistake. He's acknowledged it was a mistake. I was just astonished that he didn't understand the echoes that would.
Have you ever delivered a speech which you haven't read in advance?
No, never. I write my speeches. I don't get other people to write my speeches. I write them myself. But look, rhetoric doesn't change migration. And I think we do need to look very seriously at sorting out the issue of migration, because you can't just, if I can finish,
be 138,000 this year.
If I can just finish. Migration is a concern for many people in this country. They focus, of course, on illegal migration and small boats, but migration is a concern for people. And in my view, the reason is that we haven't established what citizenship is about in this country, because the only benefits you get from citizenship over settled status in this country are you can have a blue passport and you can vote in a general election. That's the only thing that citizenship gives you that settled status does not. I want there to be much more benefit from being a citizen in this country, and I would shift some of the things that come at the moment with settled status into the citizenship category. And I think Shabana Mahmood, I think, is going the wrong way about this, but I think there is a way of doing this that actually reduces the benefits of settled status and migration without actually being a citizen.
Emily?
To go to the original question, no, I don't think he'll go back to the Island of Strangers stuff. But again, I think it's been sort of typical Keir Starmer is that he sort of, put his hand up, did the sort of River of Ireland stuff. Shabana Mahmood then followed it up with an extremely good plan. I think some of the language they were using felt pretty un-Labour, and therefore there was a way of framing what Shabana Mahmood was putting forward better. But Keir Starmer has, have you noticed, no one's heard from Shabana. She's just been silent. She announced this big plan. Then she's just shunted to one side. They're absolutely giving another gift away to reform, because net migration this year is going to fall, they think, to 138,000. It was 200,000. I checked my figures before I came on. 200,000 in 2025. This is a win for the Labour Party, because I think immigration is tied up with what voters want. You say this is a right-wing rabbit hole. So what, you're going to turn around to every Labour voter up in the north who cares about immigration and say, you're a right-wing idiot?
Emily,
I'm really
just
sorry,
did not listen
but
to
I did
what
listen.
I said.
I did absolutely listen to what you said.
Because I
cost
spoke
of living,
about it being
the
a
NHS,
real concern for people.
Cost of living.
No, we're not. Well, you were talking over him as well.
Well, no, I broke into him very briefly once. Cost of living, NHS, immigration, these are still the top three concerns of voters. And I would argue that immigration is tightly sort of fixed at cost of living, because it's about a sense of fairness. There's not a lack of everything for everyone.
Barry, quick response.
Yeah, look, I made it very clear that I thought immigration was a serious concern of voters, and I believe that rhetoric was not the way to deal with it. But what you do need to do is you need to bring in realistic, practical policies that change the balance to make sure that citizenship has real value, and that coming here and getting settled status, you know what happened with the Boris wave. We had 40,000 jobs identified as being needed to be filled in the care sector, and they gave out 660,000 visas for those jobs.
As I understand it, that has been fixed.
That was the problem. Now, it hasn't been fixed yet, because those people are coming up to get settled status.
So let's... we've got a new health secretary, by the way. Now, Teresa, you may have seen on my screen. If you haven't, don't look at it, because I want each of you to tell me who you would like to have seen appointed health secretary, and then I'll tell you who actually was. Barry, go on. If you're Prime Minister, you're appointing a new health secretary, who would it be?
Very interesting.
Now, if you're silent for more than 7 seconds, the emergency tape kicks in.
Okay,
and then we listen to James O'Brien for the next hour.
Oh God! Oh right. Okay. I would probably move somebody who I thought was a safe pair of hands to continue, and that would probably be Darren Jones, who I trust. I'm thinking as Keir Starmer thinks. I'd probably have moved Darren Jones into that post, but I don't know.
Emily?
I saw your screen.
Oh,
so I do know.
And Teresa, you've seen it as well. Paul?
It's not who I would have thought.
I think what Keir Starmer's challenge on Friday was to show a different sense of direction. So if I was Keir Starmer, which takes some degree of imagination, but you would want somebody that makes the cabinet more broad church and is listening to a different section of the Labour Party to shore up that part, to show a different path. So I don't know, a return for Louise Haigh or somebody of that ilk that shows that there's it's not just.
Let's put it this way: Barry's on a better line on this than you are.
Well, he's closer to the Keir Starmer manner of thinking.
The new Health Secretary, Barry, should we have a drum roll? James Murray. Any thoughts?
James has proven himself a very diligent, competent, unflashy Chief Secretary. So, again, I understand why Keir...
But he's the ultimate safe pair of hands, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's been out and about just this evening, right, defending. He's been a very, very loyal soldier this last week, and I think the government hasn't had very many of those.
And I can tell you who the new Chief Secretary to the Treasury is. It's somebody who was elected in the 2024 general election, Lucy Rigby. She was the Financial Secretary to the Treasury, City Minister. She's had quite a high profile. And I put her success down to the fact that with Jackie Smith, I once did a fundraiser for her.
There you are.
Can you believe it?
She's very capable, Lucy, and she knows how to stay out of trouble.
So that's the breaking news. While we all digest that, let's hear a few adverts. It's 8:45.
This is LBC.
May we have your attention? Introducing the Volkswagen May event. Get an extra £1,000 towards your finance deposit with Solutions PCP 7.9% APR representative across the range, including the amazing Golf, Tiguan, and all-electric ID3. Major. I said it was in May, right?
Yes.
It's the final weekend, ends the 18th of May. Visit your nearest Volkswagen retailer. You may just find the car you've been looking for.
Stop it.
Participating retailers. Excludes T-Roc ID bars and Golf GTI 50. ID3 from stock only. Indemnities may be required. Registered by 30th of August. Volkswagen Finance.
Mr. and Little Miss are back in Happy Meal and they're off on a road trip. Your little one can go somewhere exciting with Little Miss Brave. Laugh all the way there with Mr. Tickle or make up an adventure all of their own. On this road trip, anything's possible. Some fun, some food. It's all inside this Happy Meal. Until the 8th of June from 11 a.m. Includes one pre-selected book or toy while stocks last. Subject to availability.
Feel every pass and every goal. Discover the next generation of televisions at John Lewis. Experience the full clarity of the latest RGB and OLED technology. Brought to you by some of the world's best brands. Price matched against 25 leading retailers with a 5-year guarantee on all TVs. Your best view of every game is available right now at John Lewis. It's football upgraded. T's and C's and exclusions apply. See johnlewis.com for details.
The following is from TfL.
My name was Luna, like the moon. I was 2 days short of my 17th birthday when I was killed. My killer wasn't a bad man. He had a rescue dog called Frank and rang his mum every Sunday. He wasn't a speed freak. He just thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit. But that was enough to knock me off my bike and kill me.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:46. Barry Gardner, Emily Sheffield, Paul Fleming and Teresa Bischoff with us. Mike says, I'm James Murray's constituent. He's very on message, but sadly he's no Stephen Pound. Well, Steve Pound listens to this programme, so I hope he's listening right now because I just read that out to Barry Gardner. And he clapped.
Ah, yes. God bless
that.
Stephen Pound.
Absolutely.
Wonderful,
One of the
wonderful.
funniest people I know.
Yeah.
He got very angry with me once because he thought I was on a panel with him, and he thought I'd called him a very, very rude word, the ultimate rude word, if you get my drift. And I hadn't. He'd completely misheard, and he absolutely lost his rag. It was quite entertaining. Anyway, let's go to John in Wembley for another call. Hello, John.
Hello, sir.
Hi, what would you like to say?
Question is, sir, is there any chance that the manifestos can be legally binding?
Well, the answer to that is no, so we could move on to the next question. But, let's have a little fun with this, because a lot of people actually do raise this at election time. What's the point of manifestos if political parties can just break their promises? Emily?
Sorry. Can you repeat that again?
Are you with us, Anne?
Sorry, I was. No,
you were texting.
No, I wasn't. I was doing the trick question at the end. I was finding the answer
Is there any
to it.
possibility of manifestos being legally binding?
No, and I don't think they should be. We've probably got too much that's legally binding at the moment, and that's half the problem. It takes so much legislation to undo, things that seem wise at the time, but later put us in a bit of a hole, I would say.
Larry?
Manifestos are there so that in 4 or 5 years' time you can hold us to account and say, well, hang on, you promised to do this and you didn't do it. Or, well, actually, you managed to do most of the things that you promised. That's what a manifesto is for. But let me say that that having a manifesto, in my view, becomes completely redundant if you go into coalition politics. And that's why I am against coalition politics. And because if you're in coalition, and particularly if you have a single transferable vote or some other form of not first past the post, what happens is you have your manifesto and then you say in 4 years' time, oh, well, of course, it was the other party that wouldn't let us do it and we were hemmed in and we couldn't do it. Because if you have an overall majority and you are the government, then actually in 4 years' time, the electorate can say to you, you failed, out.
But the Liberal Democrats, when they were in coalition with the Conservatives, they achieved 75% of their manifesto promises, which I always think they ought to be really proud of that, and they ought to have been shouting it from the roofs.
Yeah, but
instead, you won't find any Liberal Democrats saying that they thought the coalition was a good idea.
But the one big one that they didn't was, of course, fees for tertiary education.
Paul?
I mean, manifestos are the proactive vision of a potential government, but people also vote on the basis of principles and how government's going to react to situations they can't envisage. And, manifestos, of course, shouldn't be legally binding because things happen that are not within government's controls. And one of the problems that Keir Starmer has at the minute is that we've got a manifesto that hasn't been delivered at any degree of speed, but also that the principles and judgment that he's exercised in the reactive business of government, whether it be Mandelson or whether it be the compromises that have been made around benefits and so on, they've just not rung true with the vision that people have had. So they're important, but they're a proactive measure, not a reactive measure, and the reactive measures can't be known in advance. Keir Starmer has been infamously mercurial in his principles, to put it very mildly, and that's the bit where it has gone a bit wrong for him, more than anything, more than manifesto delivery, really.
Teresa.
Yeah, I think if you look at the promises Keir Starmer made when he was going for Labour leadership to where we've gotten to now, there is quite a progression and a fairly big change in intention, I'd say. I do think it's good that we hold...
What, you mean he made 10 commitments and then reneged on all of them? You ought to be a diplomat.
This is actually such a good point. Maybe I should be. No, but I thought you had a fairly forgiving tone, so I was mirroring that. But yes, exactly. That's what I'm referring to, of course. And so I think it's important that we hold politicians accountable, and I think this is actually a very interesting suggestion from our caller. At the same time, of course, there's always a big song and dance as soon as a politician breaks a manifesto commitment. I think that's right, but we should start thinking about what some real consequences could be, even internally for parties.
John, let's hear from you. Are you convinced by what you've heard, or do you think that they should be legally binding?
There should be. Something should happen because, and I'll give you one of my grudges is the leasehold laws. I mean, I'm trapped in a leasehold, and I'm paying for leasehold and being charged by managing agents astronomical money.
Yeah.
And we were promised that something was going to be done, and it's been pushed down the line. And what is the point of me voting?
Yeah. John, if I can just say to you that there is a leasehold bill coming in this year that won't deliver all the things that I think are needed, but it will actually make big changes. Ultimately, they have to sort out common hold and give you the power over your own home. And I don't know whether you know, but I've been campaigning on this now for the past 27 years.
And I can verify that because we've talked about that before, haven't we? Right, let's go on to another question from Henry. Is Wes Streeting, Mr. Tory Light, really what the Labour Party needs right now? We haven't really talked much about Wes Streeting in this hour. And let me add a supplementary to that. If you were just looking at who would make the best Prime Minister as opposed to who would make the best Labour Party leader, would it be Wes Streeting? Paul?
No. Because again, this isn't actually about personalities. It's not. It's about material
the current
reality.
Prime Minister hasn't got one because he can't sell his policies, so he needs to have a salesman personality. And Andy Burnham's got that. Wes Streeting's got that. Angela Rayner's got that.
But you can't sell policies that you don't implement fully. You can't sell policies on the back of a manifesto that you haven't implemented at speed. This is about material reality and about whether people can pay their gas bill. And we've talked earlier about growth. Growth figures are up, but people aren't feeling it because there hasn't been the necessary beginning of redistribution. We talk about migration figures. People aren't bothered about migration figures when they are told constantly that we can't afford to fix the rack in your kids' schools or bail out your local authority or make your bins collected or help you with the cost of heating oil. Then they think, well, hang on a minute, how on earth can we have more people in here making those demands? It's not about these numbers. It's not about xenophobia or racism. What it's about is about the cost of living. And that's what Keir Starmer hasn't tackled. And Wes Streeting he's not Tory light, he's continuity Starmer. And I
don't think he would agree with that.
Well, he wouldn't as of this morning, but I mean, I think a few weeks ago he would have said absolutely.
A challenge to the other three. If you're very brief, we can fit in another question. Emily.
I mean, he would be my favourite at the moment, I have to say, but that's because I think on the one hand he's had the guts to resign.
And your husband doesn't fancy him.
My husband doesn't fancy him. I've met him. I really like him. I've met a lot of the Labour front bench. No, I like all of them.
I think you should have a challenge there.
I don't think he's Mr. Tory light. I do think he probably is an inheritor of Tony Blair more than some of the others. And I would just like to remind all of the Labour Party, Tony Blair, won a great election and stayed there. He wasn't being chucked out after 2 years.
Okay.
So I don't know why they see that as such an insult.
Barry?
I think he is an immensely talented politician. He has
just
charisma.
Sense the butt coming.
No. He's got charisma. He's driven reforms within the health service. He's got the numbers down. He's done well in that respect. I disagree with some of his other views on the health service and the privatisation of it. But I want a party that is a broad church. I want to go back to the days where we could disagree respectfully with each other and have a leader who then said, OK, well, I've listened to you and I've listened to you and this is the direction we're going to go and now you need to all fall into line.
Do you remember who the health secretary was who first privatised a hospital? Andy Burnham. Just saying. Not trying to cause trouble, but Teresa.
I think Wes could certainly do the job. It has to be about uniting the party, but also uniting about Labour's voter base. But something that I think we have not spoken about enough in these last 6 days, understandably, because so much of it has been about personality politics. I just really would need to understand more of his policy platform to be able to say for certain.
Well, one 100%. Day you might. Right. Holly in Kidderminster says, is it time to take political opposition leaders' safety more seriously? Now, a bit of background to this. A Green Party spokesperson has admitted that Zach Polanski did not vote in last week's local elections, having previously claimed that he had voted for the new Hackney Mayor, Zoe Garbett. The spokesperson has said that Mr Polanski did not want to put himself on the electoral register as a, quote, consequence of the heightened intrusion and safety risk he faces. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage has said today that £5 million he was given by a crypto billionaire soon before becoming an MP, which he did not declare to authorities, was a reward for having campaigned for Brexit, having previously claimed the money was to pay for his security. Well, I think I deserve a reward. I didn't campaign for it, but I certainly stuck to it afterwards. Right, we've literally got 30 seconds each on this. Barry?
You don't have to be on the open register to be able to vote, and therefore this is complete nonsense. He could have withheld his address and his name from the register. He would have been recorded at the town hall and been able to vote. He obviously forgot to do that, and therefore, I'm afraid, I believe that this is fake news.
Paul, Zach was an actor. Presume he was a member of yours at one point.
It would not be possible for me to disclose people's trade union membership as protected information, but I would trust that he would be. 85% of actors are members of the union, so I would assume so. It's a symptom, isn't it, that this story, whether it's true or not, is something that is plausible because of the heightened level of tension that we all have in political discourse and the way that we have, the sort of febrile state we're all in. It's symptomatic of the social contract kind of breaking down a bit, in that people are paying their taxes, they're not seeing their cost of living, their cost of living improve, they're not seeing the kind of Britain that they want, and that is making people angry and desperate and worried that politics isn't the answer, which is the worrying undertone to these stories, whether it be from Farage or...
a part of the answer could be for the state to guarantee political leaders' safety, provide them with security.
Yeah, I think, coming back to my point earlier, the fact, without wishing to go into the specifics of those two examples, because obviously they're each fairly controversial in their own ways, I think as the country moves away from a two-party system to a multi-party system, I'm not saying that's my personal view, but that's just what the voters are saying, and Westminster is catching up. I think it is fair enough, as more and more parties get bigger and bigger, that they could also have the right to...
I think the state's also there to guarantee everybody's security, isn't it?
I think safety is absolutely key. We've had 2 MPs murdered. I sympathise that Farage has had threats. What I really, really hate is the cry wolf, which I think we're beginning to see with Farage now, that money that he said was for his safety. I'd just like to say, rubbish. I could use a much stronger word than that, but I won't.
Well saved, if I may say so. Right, our fun question from Mark in Cardiff. Given those viral claims about the book that Barry Gardiner took along when he was sat behind Keir Starmer recently, which was The Fraud by Paul Holden, which book would the panel members like to take to a similar event to send a message to someone important? Since you've been Googling, Emily, I'm going to come to you first.
I came up with a really bad one, although I do think it's How to Win Friends and Influence People, and I would say that's got to be aimed.
That was mine!
Sorry,
are you kidding
it's a really obvious one.
I'll come up with something
I
else.
would say that all those fighting for the leadership are going to need that. Really need that right
Barry,
now.
have you got another book that you might take?
During the leadership hustings, if I've got a front row seat, then I think I'll probably take along My Family and Other Animals by Gerald Durrell.
Paul?
I think The Road to Wigan Pier might be a helpful book for Andy Burnham in any forthcoming meetings, as he lays out his platform to the trade union movement.
I think 1984 might be a better bet, but Teresa?
I think at this point I'd probably suggest the let them theory.
The what?
The let them theory. No. It's about accepting the things you cannot control.
Ah, okay. Right, well, thank you all very much indeed. Now, Monday's panel includes the Conservative Shadow Health Minister, Dr. Luke Evans, plus Labour MP Rachel Maskell. Right, coming up in the next hour, we're going to return to the same question that I put at the beginning of the hour. If you wanted to vote for the best Prime Minister, if you were a Labour Party member, which of the candidates would you choose? Last night we asked, do you think Wes Streeting would be a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer? Overwhelmingly, you all said yes. Having on Monday evening, overwhelmingly, all said that you wanted Keir Starmer to stay. Make of that what you will. Do you think that the Labour Party should essentially stick or twist? Stick with Starmer or just try somebody else? 0345 6060 973 is the number to call here on LBC.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, a route of return to Westminster has opened up for the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham. He said he'd stand in a by-election triggered by the decision of the MP for Makerfield, Josh Simons, to stand down. If elected, he'd be able to join the race to lead the Labour Party. Polly Toynbee, columnist for The Guardian, told LBC it'll be a really tough fight.
If he wins it, it makes him absolutely the qualified person to be the leader of the Labour Party and to take on reform. The big battle from now on for the next 3 years is for Labour and for all of the progressive parties is how best to keep reform out.
Well, earlier today, Wes Streeting stepped down as Health Secretary, criticising the PM's leadership, but he stopped short of announcing a bid for the leadership. Douglas Alexander, Labour Scotland Secretary, told LBC he questions the former Health Secretary's criticism.
In relation to his critique that there was drift instead of delivery, just look at what his own department announced this morning in terms of record falls in relation to waiting times in England. Look at what Rachel Reeves was able to indicate today when we got new numbers showing that in the first quarter of the year, we had the fastest growing economy in the G7.
Well, former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray, has been appointed Health Secretary in the last half an hour, replacing Wes Streeting. Well, Iain Dale broke that news to his cross-question panel this evening, which included the Labour MP Barry Gardiner.
The new Health Secretary, James Murray. Any thoughts?
James has proven himself a very diligent, competent, unflashy Chief Secretary. Again, I understand why Keir...
But he's the ultimate safe pair of hands, isn't he?
Yeah.
In other news this evening, one young person's died and 2 people are being treated after cases of meningitis were detected in Reading. Close contacts of those affected are being offered antibiotics as a precaution. And the Chief Rabbi says the community in Golders Green appreciated a visit from the King enormously following last month's terror attack. Charles met the 2 Jewish men who were stabbed. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed up 47 points at 10,372. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather turning drier overnight as clear spells develop. Some showers continuing in the far north, southwest and Northern Ireland. A low of 1. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 4 minutes past 9 on LBC. Well, the latest bit of political news, which you may have heard in Cross Question, is that James Murray has been promoted from Chief Secretary to the Treasury to Health Secretary, and Lucy Rigby becomes the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. So an increase of 1 woman in the Cabinet. So if you want to call and talk about that, you're very welcome to. But I really want to know whether you think that it would be wise for the Labour Party to stick or twist. When I said that in the talk-up, lots of people have been texting in, and so far, I think I'm right in saying that every single person is saying the Labour Party should stick with Starmer. I find it very difficult to judge whether that is representative, because as I said last night, virtually all of you were saying you thought Wes Streeting would be a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer. But we now know that Angela Rayner has been exonerated, in her words, over her tax affairs, so she's free to stand if she wants to. I suspect she would be able to get the 81 MPs necessary. We now know that Andy Burnham is going to put himself forward for this by-election in Makerfield, although people there were saying Makerfield. I'm pretty sure it's Makerfield, but if anybody wants to correct me on that, feel free. Andy Burnham versus Keir Starmer versus Wes Streeting versus Angela Rayner. I mean, there could be others that come forward. I suspect that there won't be, but there could be others. So let me know which of those do you think would make the best Prime Minister. But given that the electorate for this election is only Labour Party members, do you remember all those Tory leadership elections where people were complaining that, this is just a few Tory members voting for our Prime Minister? I wonder whether we're going to get the same accusations here, because although the Labour Party membership is bigger than the Conservatives, it's not that much bigger now. Under Jeremy Corbyn, it reached 600,000. I think it's down to about 250,000 now. So I really want to hear from Labour Party members, because you're the ones that are going to decide who our next Prime Minister should be. It's your calls all the way in this hour, right from now. No guests whatsoever. The only interruptions are 2 breaks and a news bulletin. So we'll get as many of you on the air as possible over the next 53 minutes. Grace is in Ealing. Hello, Grace.
Hi. Interesting to hear about my MP promotion. I was in the middle of writing an email to him, but I don't think he'll have time to read that now. And I concur with your previous comments that Steve Pound was a great MP too, where we had him in our seat. Yesterday you read out a message from someone about Wes Streeting, and he complained that Wes Streeting is a Christian and that this meant that he opposed assisted dying, and this texter was very angry about that. And I wanted to clarify that Christianity isn't about dictating what other people do. I know that's a popular misconception, but Streeting has said that for him Christianity in politics is about compassion, and most people who are concerned about the assisted dying bill are concerned about how it could affect vulnerable people.
Well, James Murray, of course, voted in favour of the assisted dying bill, so I imagine, Grace, you're not a particular fan.
I'm not going to judge either way about how MPs have voted on it, because I think that most people have their heart in the right place on the issue. They just see differently what the best thing is because of how many people they've heard on either side of the debate. I think that on both sides, people are genuinely concerned about human suffering. I, on balance, would think that I'd take Wes Streeting's position on it and not support it, because I am concerned about it affecting vulnerable people. But I understand that people who support it are concerned about suffering at the end of life. So I wouldn't criticise either way. My writing to my MP has mostly been about poverty in our world, which I bang on about all the time. And James Murray has been quite receptive to that. But I am very angry with Starmer for having cut aid to the world's most disadvantaged people, for whom spending can make far more impact than spending here can, pound for pound. So on that basis, I voted against the Labour Party last week for the first time in my life, although I'm torn about how I would vote in a general election, because I do like James Murray as an MP, and I feel I probably owe him a vote.
So of the four, who would you like? Who do you think would make the best Prime Minister?
I'm still leaning towards Streeting. I was interested by how he changed his position on the issue of gender amidst the Cass review. And I just thought, actually, for a politician to say that they've changed their minds and to be open about that and to base that on science is a positive thing that we don't often enough see. Obviously, again, as a Christian, I believe in repenting and changing our minds about things, and that God forgives us, and the public is less forgiving than people might be. But I think, yes, to be able to see things differently, and for a politician to say that, that they're looking at things in the light of new evidence is something we ought to have more of in politics. So I just approved of him listening to the science on that. I thought that was a really good thing.
OK, Grace, thank you. Gabby says, why is nobody mentioning David Lammy, I wonder? I think a route back for David Miliband would be a good idea. Well, we are getting some interesting suggestions. I mean, David Miliband, maybe there should be another by-election that the taxpayer could fork out £120,000 for and let David Miliband come back and throw his hat in the ring as well. That is not going to happen, Gabby. I mean, effectively, Wes Streeting covers the same political footprint as David Miliband. You ask why nobody's mentioning David Lammy. Well, I mean, he is Deputy Prime Minister, so you might think that they ought to. Not sure that he's covered himself in glory as Justice Secretary, it has to be said, with his judicial reforms. It's been pointed out to me also that David Miliband is on £1 million a year as the boss of the International Rescue Committee charity. So I'm not sure whether he'd want to give that up, or am I being too cynical? Carrion is in Chester. Hello, Carrion.
Hi, Ian. How are you?
Good, thank you. What would you like to say?
I was talking to your researcher, and I was just explaining I did vote for Keir Starmer, and I will have a vote if a contest occurs again, and I will probably still vote for Keir Starmer, simply because I currently, on the people who have suggested they might run, I can't see anybody who would continue to stabilise the economy, to keep the bond markets calm, to continue with how we look on the world stage.
Sorry, let me take you back there. How are the bond markets calm when they're at their highest level for 28 years?
Exactly. And the reason is because of the uncertainty. And I don't think a more left-wing candidate would make those any better. I think they're the highest level since the 1970s, I read. So the uncertainty is probably causing the vast majority of that. But if, for example, Andy Burnham or Angela Rayner, as much as I like them as people, were voted in, I just don't think with £100 billion a year repayments just to service the debt, more borrowing would help that. I mean, personally, the policies would probably sound really good to me, but I have to be realistic, and I just don't think it's the right time for them. Maybe in a couple of years' time when things are more stabilised, you can offer more tax relief and more policies that would really, really feel like they're helping people. But at this stage, I just think it would be the wrong time to do that.
Okay. Well, it's very interesting, Karen, because you do represent most of the people that are texting in who are saying they're Labour Party members. So far, every single one has said that they would continue with their support for Keir Starmer. Elliot is in Cheadle. Elliot, hi.
Oh, hello, Ian. Well, quite simply, Streeting has behaved immaturely by resigning. He couldn't muster 81 MPs and he couldn't live with
we don't know that yet.
Well, he simply couldn't. I mean,
no. I don't think you've got the chronology right here. He couldn't possibly have mustered 81 before he resigned. He might be able to by this time tomorrow, though.
Yeah, well, that's all a matter of hindsight or possibilities. It's all improbabilities. We don't know that. The truth is he's resigned. He should not have done that. He should have stayed rigid in his position. He was doing a reasonable job. And then you take Burnham. I mean, why does he think that he can win this seat in Ashton and Makerfield when Ashton North, Ashton South both went emphatically Reform? Why does he think that he could maintain a 5,399 majority or even a majority of one?
Because he's the king of the North.
Oh, he's the king of the North. Well, he may be the king of Manchester, but not of Ashton and Makerfield. The truth of the matter is the facts speak for themselves. He hasn't got a hope in hell. It'll be the most polarised seat in political history.
Yep.
Everybody will descend upon it, and the reality is Burnham will be washed away.
Well, I tend to agree with you on that. I think he's going to find it very difficult to win that seat. But imagine if he did win it and fought off Reform. What a platform to run for the leadership.
Yes, but what if he doesn't win it?
Well,
what an indictment
it'll be
on the Labour Party.
It'll be knock knock. Who's there? Andy. Andy who?
Correct. Absolutely correct. And he will put him in the doldrums. He had a nice, comfortable position at Manchester Mayor. Now he opens it up to the Reform Party. How can that be sensible in logical political thinking?
That is a very good thought, because, of course, there will have to be a Manchester mayoral by-election at a cost to the taxpayer of £5 million. I keep repeating that, but I think it is worth repeating. And imagine if Reform did win that.
Yes, exactly. So what has he achieved? He'll be in the doldrums. Streeting will probably be on the back benches, and he will probably lose his seat in 29. He's only got a 589 majority.
Yeah, but in the local elections, Labour did really well in Redbridge.
Yes, but it'll be a different matter at the general
Well, it might
election.
be, you're right. But, I think his selling point to Labour Party members is, well, you want someone who can fight Reform? That's exactly what I've done in my area. And did they increase the number of seats on Redbridge Council? I have a feeling that they did. Yeah. Okay, Elliot, thank you very much indeed for that. Lots of texts coming in. I'll read out a few of those in a moment and take more of your calls. Should Labour stick or twist? It's 16 minutes past 9.
PM Under Pressure. Follow it live on LBC.
With Halfords, this summer is about doing more. More days out, more last-minute plans. And with roof boxes and bike racks fitted in store, there's room for it all. Make sure your car is adventure-ready with a 10-point car check. And stay prepped for whatever the British weather throws your way with aircon checks and wiper blades fitted in store. Our experts are on hand with anything you need. So shop online or in store and get out there with Halfords. Services subject to availability. Full T's and C's apply. See halfords.com for details.
Now, focus on your car. That's right, the one you're ready to sell. See it clearly in your mind, waiting to be sold. We can make it disappear. Just watch carefully. Your car sold, collected and paid for in almost no time at all. It's not magic, it's motorway. Sell your car today at motorway.co.uk.
At John Lewis Money, we know your home is more than an address. It's the sunlight pouring in. Well, sometimes. The coffee on tap and the best spot on the sofa. It's why our home insurance is thoughtfully designed with 3 levels of flexible cover for the home you've created. Because when you notice the details, you notice the difference. Search John Lewis Money. Terms and exclusions apply. John Lewis Finance Limited is authorised for insurance distribution and credit broking by the Financial Conduct Authority.
Iain Dale on LBC.
9:17 on LBC. Right, let's take a couple of texts before we go back to your calls. We're asking whether you think Labour should stick or twist. This is... Oh, no, we've just done that one. I didn't realise that was still on the screen. This is from Jason, who says, I'm a Labour Party member. In the late 90s, I was an employee too. These machinations genuinely disgust me. Streeting resigning to further his personal ambitions, Burnham thinking it's okay to break his word to the people of Manchester, forcing a mayoral and parliamentary by-election, a bit of which Labour could lose. This naked pursuit of personal ambition is exactly what voters hate. It's distracting, it's damaging, it's petty student politics. The entire party needs to wake up. The electorate don't just hate Starmer, he's the lightning rod for a general trend. They hate politicians and how they put political games ahead of the interests of the people. Well, that is... I think there'll be a lot of people listening who think, yeah, Jason is absolutely right on that one. Josie is in Lewisham. Hello, Josie.
Hiya. So in regards to kind of the whole conversation I've been following for 3 hours now, I think absolutely Labour should twist, as you said. The Tories managed to stay in for 14 years, and I think a lot of that was a constant rebrand. The way that Boris Johnson was able to disassociate himself from the period of austerity and Cameron, they constantly had a rebrand. But I was hearing earlier people were talking about the return of David Lammy being potentially talked about, Andy Burnham, Angela Rayner. Whilst I think that these are competent politicians, Zach Polanski, Zoran Mandani in the US, I think, if anything, just shows that we need new voices and we need to reignite the left with kind of an actual return to socialism, whether that be democratic socialism or something more radical. I think we just start going back to New Labour, bringing politicians back. It just gets really dull. We're in a very different time as we were 20 years ago.
And you're a Labour supporter?
Yeah, so I joined the Labour Party when I was 14, which is kind of embarrassing. But in the last election, I voted Greens in Lewisham, and there was a real feeling of change and energy in locally. And I think there is something happening within progressive communities, not just in the UK, but internationally. In like I said, Zoran Mandani in New York. And I think it needs to be driven by members or by progressives, grassroots kind of connected. I wasn't actually a supporter of Corbyn in 2016, but I think the times have changed very significantly and people want a radical alternative. So just bringing back old New Labour MPs isn't what people are wanting. They're tainted with the Iraq War.
But they didn't want Jeremy Corbyn either, did they, in a general election?
Yeah, so I'm not saying Jeremy Corbyn. I think actually, there are some really interesting younger voices in the Labour Party, more charismatic voices. Again, Corbyn has been a politician for a long period of time, and I think there's something interesting seeing, like in Lewisham, for example, the mayor that has just been elected was a Labour councillor and is very young, is very kind of charismatic and really engaged in the local community. So I just think bringing back kind of vintage MPs isn't going to do the Labour Party any kind of help.
That there is no instance in this country of the electorate in a general election voting in mass numbers to enable a left-wing Labour Party to win. I mean, 1983, I remember well, it was the first general election that I could vote in. And the Labour Party had a very, very left-wing manifesto then, and they were absolutely trounced by the Conservatives in that election.
electorally, if you look at that one, that was also I think it was the SDP, the left split, and that had significant electoral consequences.
That is true, but
2017, Labour got actually more votes than they did in the last election, and obviously, again, this
but
is
not the
kind of
seats.
thing of, in terms of seats, they managed to displace the Conservatives from a majority government. What I'm not saying is socialism is automatically electable, but actually these policies, these manifesto commitments, more people than ever before support taxes on the more wealthy in society, support nationalisation. People want radical change, and they don't.
Yeah, but you're mouthing inanities there, if I may say so. You say people want radical change and they want nationalisation. Yeah, they want nationalisation until they realise, like the water industry, for example. It's easy to say, well, let's nationalise the water industry, until you actually realise that it would cost the taxpayer £100 billion to do so.
But I mean, if we're going to think, so water industry is one. There is also the trains that are currently being nationalised that is actually a lot more cost effective. The point is they shouldn't have been necessarily privatised in the first place. And unfortunately, like you said earlier, Andy Burnham was one of the first people to privatise a hospital. That we've got to a state of point where people feel so disillusioned in public services and in services that should be public, that people therefore, I think, like as I've seen in Lewisham, people have had enough of a Labour Party that pretends to be progressive but really is the same as it ever has been.
Just on that, I've got a text here from Lee who says, what is this progressive that people on the left keep banging on about?
I mean, the progressive on the left, I think, is you see, like, more than ever than before, you have tactical voting. You have to have it at first past the post. I know so many people, anecdotally, and also from what I've read, that are voting Lib Dem in an area that Lib Dem will win. You vote tactically to support a progressive alliance.
Yeah, but what does this word mean?
Of reform, like, millions, or I think a million is what it was kind of predicted as, people took to the streets against reform. There is a progressive movement.
No, again, you said that word. Nobody knows what it means. Define it for me.
What word?
Progressive.
Progressives, it is people that are supporting of a multicultural Britain, celebrating democracy, supporting social services, and making sure that we're not targeting migrants, we're not blaming migrants and refugees for our problems, and actually calling for a welfare state that is effective. That is what the Greens are calling for in Lewisham. And that is what I see Zohran Mamdani doing in New York excellently, and also happens to be getting a lot of the Trump vote in New York. So progressive policies, genuine progressive, social, democratic socialist policies are electable, and that's not, that you're looking at, you talked about 1984, that's like almost 50 years ago now. The times have changed to such an extent that people are incredibly disillusioned.
Well, I think that's right, and I think that goes to explain the rise in reform on the right and the rise of the Greens on the left. And in the end, what we might end up with is a giant face-off between the Greens and Reform, and the two traditional parties, or even the three traditional parties, won't get a look in. And I mean, I think that could happen within the next 10 years. Josie, thank you very much. Let's go to George in Swindon. Now, George, Swindon has two marginal seats. If there's a Labour government, they go Labour. If there's a Conservative government, they go Conservative. What's your view on this Labour leadership crisis?
Well, I actually live in Chippenham.
Oh, right, okay.
But it's near enough. Don't tarnish us with the same brush. We've got a lovely Lib Dem MP, and she's wonderful. Sort of my thing with the stick and twist is I actually first thought stick. I thought Starmer needs to ride it out. I've changed my mind completely in the last sort of 24 hours. But the options, they're interesting. Angela Rayner as Prime Minister, would that be such a good idea?
Well, some people no doubt think so.
I love Angela Rayner, but could you imagine her in a meeting room with Donald Trump? Could she hold her tongue? I think what we need is someone who's bold and aggressive. Starmer tried too hard to pander to reform voters who he's never going to win, and he tried to pander to the left voters who are now just voting Green. So what are you left with? You're just basically left with people who have always voted Labour and they'll never vote anybody else, and sort of upsetting everyone in the process. We need someone who's going to be bold on Europe. We need someone who's going to be bold with America and put them in their place, which I do think Starmer's done quite a good job on. But we also need a very good, effective communicator. And I dare say that Andy Burnham would be quite a good person to do that.
I think he is quite a good communicator. I think you're absolutely right. I think Wes Streeting is an even better communicator. And I would also put Angela Rayner in the category of being a good communicator. I wouldn't put Ed Miliband in that category, and I wouldn't put Keir Starmer in that category. But the job of Prime Minister is multifaceted. But I do think in the modern era, communications ability is absolutely paramount. Clement Attlee, who is widely seen as probably the best Labour Prime Minister ever, I mean, he was not a communicator. But that was an entirely different age. He didn't have social media. He didn't have the internet. He didn't have the 24/7 news media to contend with. And you go back to the days of Harold Macmillan, who many would say was quite a successful Conservative Prime Minister. I mean, he used to have a little nap in the afternoon and read a bit of Trollope. Well, can you imagine if Keir Starmer did a television interview and admitted that in the afternoon he read a little bit of Trollope or anybody else? I mean, he would be ridiculed, whereas in those days, people would have probably thought that was quite a good thing.
I dare say that in the political age of Farage, now, I cannot stand Nigel Farage. I think he is the key culprit in all of Britain's problems at the moment. You can agree or disagree. That's just sort of where I'm at. I think he is, person number one on why we're in the mess that we're in. He is the greatest campaigner ever, and possibly the greatest communicator on the political stage, because he just gets people rallied around him, and you can't deny that. And then you've got Starmer, who is a bit of a wet flannel, and all of these people who are not really looking into things, they're just looking at personality. They're going to absolutely vote for the personality, and all of a sudden the political stage is just like Britain's Got Talent.
Yeah, maybe we should all have red buzzers.
I certainly wouldn't be giving the golden buzzer to either of them. But yeah.
I bat them over the net, George. You knock them back. Thank you very much indeed. Sean in Concert has been in touch. He says, Iain, you and Aggie are both invited to Wetherspoons in concert. I won't give the date, for my 61st birthday. Well, that's very kind of you, Sean. I'm actually coming up to your area on Sunday to see Newcastle play West Ham. I'm not sure I'm going to have time to drop in Concert, though. But I do want to come to Concert because, as you know, my grandfather spent a lot of time in Concert, so I'd quite like to see where he lived. Thank you very much, Sean. Right, more calls to come. Do you think Labour should stick or twist? 0345 6060 973. It's 9:30. Let's get the news headlines with Daryl Jackson.
Andy Burnham will try to run for Parliament after the MP for Makerfield says he will stand down to trigger a by-election for him. Josh Simon says he believes the Greater Manchester Mayor can drive change. The announcement follows Wes Streeting's resignation as Health Secretary, saying he had lost confidence in Sir Keir Starmer. Well, James Murray has been appointed the new Health Secretary. It's a big promotion for him, having previously served as Chief Secretary to the Treasury. And a student's died and 2 others are being treated after a meningitis outbreak in Reading. The young person attended Henley College in Oxfordshire, according to a GP surgery. LBC weather turning drier overnight as clear spells develop. Some showers continuing in the far north, southwest and Northern Ireland, a low of 1.
This is LBC.
Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And come on in to Classic FM Calm, LBC's soothing sister station. Find peace in the music with Classic FM Calm. Listen on Global Player or ask your smart speaker to play Classic FM Calm.
You've packed enough suitcases to know quality when you see it. Well, Saga Travel Insurance has been named a Which Best Buy. And now get 20% off when you buy before the 11th of June. Search Saga Travel Insurance for a quote today. New policies only, Standard and Plus are Which Best Buys May 2025. Terms and conditions apply. Over 50s only.
Calling all young creatives. It's time to get prepped for the media business. And where better than Global Academy? Here's Atina, a media business student in Year 12.
Being a young creative at Global Academy means that I get to turn my passion into a career. From studying creative enterprise, I've already learnt how to market my own business and gain knowledge about the business side of the industry.
Global Academy. Apply now and join us in Years 10 or 12. globalacademy.com.
Next.
Hi, just these, thanks. Do you do cashback?
Just need to check you're not a robot first. New security policy.
Okay.
How many traffic lights can you see out the window?
Oh, 2?
No, that's wrong.
Right, well, obviously I'm not a robot.
That's what a robot would say.
What a load of malarkey. Smarty keeps things simple, like 80 gigabytes for £10. And on a rolling monthly SIM plan, you're free to leave any time. Less malarkey, more smarty. Search Smarty Mobile.
Go all Irish to France with great low prices. With Irish Ferries, you can for less. Irish Ferries, see travel differently. T's and C's apply.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
9:33 on LBC. Michael is in Dover. Hello, Michael.
Hello. Good to talk to you again. Can I just, before I make my point, can I just pick up on something the lady said a couple of calls ago? She very articulate and keen on what she was saying, but she mentioned the railway, and I worked on the railway for 30 years. I started off under British Rail and went into privatisation. There was a dramatic improvement in the rolling stock when privatisation came along. They changed their attitude. The old slam door stock, they used to run it until it broke down, send a loco out and drag it back into the workshop. The modern trains, they used to be mileage-based, and they'd call them in and carry out servicing based on the mileage they'd done, which meant they were far more reliable. A lot of people compare French train services to the British and criticise the British service. In actual fact, we run far more trains. We used to run 5 trains in off-peak periods from Dover into London terminal stations. In Calais to Paris, they'd run 5 in a morning. Consequently, you get a slight hiccup, and that's where you get the delays in the services, because it has such a knock-on effect because of the concentration of services. Anyway, that's the railway taken care of. Come back to the pickle that the Labour Party have got themselves into. Whether we stick with Starmer or have a change, I think we're doomed, because Starmer has had so many U-turns because he can't get policies through because of the backbenchers. Streeting is to the right. I suspect he'll have less support from the backbenchers than Starmer. So Streeting would be having quite a few failed policies in the Commons. If we go to the left, they're going to get greater support, I suspect, from the backbenchers, but it'd be higher taxes and bigger spending, and they're taking the UK off to hell in a handcart. So unless we have a general election sometime down the line, I don't see the prospects of the UK prospering happening anytime soon.
What do you make of the fact, though, that the growth figures out today show that we, as a country, our economy is growing faster than any other country in the G7? Now, normally, a government will be trumpeting that from the rooftops and say, well, this is proof that our strategy is working.
Yeah, I know. I was stunned when I heard that. And you've got to take your hat off and say, well, yes, thank you very much. You've done something right, because obviously it's working out. I don't see that being sustainable, because I've never supported Labour. In fact, you're inspiring me to dust off my Conservative membership card and perhaps get a bit more involved locally and pursue a more active interest in politics with the Conservatives. But, yeah, you've got to take your hat off to them and give them a compliment for doing something right. But generally speaking, I don't hold out much hope. I mean, a lot of people criticise the small boats coming across the channel, and as I understand it, it's not such a big issue when you consider the other migrants that come in from other areas or whatever. But it's something that Starmer will never, ever get on top of, and I know the Conservatives didn't get on top of it exactly, but Starmer will never get on top of it because he's pursuing this legal vision that the law can enforce the people smugglers to stop their business. But unless you have a deterrent, which Rwanda was, and the Republic of Ireland were complaining to the UK because of Rwanda, because they found that they had migrants going from the UK via Northern Ireland to the Republic.
Well, I know, but I should point out that over the last few months, the number of people coming over the channel has dramatically reduced.
Yeah, and the weather's going to be improving and it'll go up again. The Folkestone MP last year was trumpeting how their policies were working for the small boats because the figures are reduced. But he said that after a fortnight of rough weather, and that the following month the figures spiked. And if you confiscate small boats in Germany before they get to France, all you're doing is concentrating the same number of migrants into a smaller number of boats.
Okay.
And I suggest that's why the deaths in the channel have spiked.
All right, well, we've slightly gone off the subject here, Michael, but thank you very much indeed. Tony says, I don't want a charismatic politician for PM. I want a serious person who stands up for the country in the interests of the country. What does progressive mean? What does change mean? Ask them. None of them can tell you how we want. See, it does help, Tony. Can I give you a little tip? When you're sending a text in, particularly of this length, it helps to add the odd full stop or comma in because it helps me read it out. Thank you very much. Neil is in Croydon. Hello, Neil.
Hello there. I couldn't agree more on punctuation.
We're grammar pedants, aren't we?
I'm a semicolon fan. But anyway, look, moving on. Look, I don't think it matters who gets selected now. Even if Labour tax more or spend more or borrow more, to make a difference in the country takes time. And 2 years, have they had a long enough time? Maybe, maybe not. But I don't think they've overall done. They've not been focused on the things that is important to people, which is money in their pocket, getting a job, having prospects, having a future, going on holiday. All of those things are what are important to people on the street. Kids coming out of schools and universities want to know that there's a job there. They just haven't focused on that. The focus has been on dumb things like VAT on private schools, which has raised practically no money at all. And I don't think it's going to really matter for Labour at the next election who they pick now. Maybe a bit of damage limitation, maybe not, but I think it'll make very little difference. And I think that overall, what Labour lacks is a vision, and it lacks a vision because it's too far away from the real world in terms of who are MPs and who can actually help build a vision. It's not just the Prime Minister that has to have a vision, the Cabinet and the party and ultimately we, the voters, are pushing for what we want and how we vote. And I think them listening to voters, listening to the people that matter in elections wouldn't hurt not just actually Labour, but practically quite a lot of the parties. But I don't see Burnham making a big difference other than we'll all be paying more. And I want to qualify one big thing. I believe everybody would happily pay more tax if they believed the money was being spent well.
I'm not I think that might have been true a few years ago, but I think that the tax burden as it is now, I think people are really starting to feel it, and particularly those people who are who haven't seen the tax thresholds rise. So people go from paying 20% tax to 40% tax just because they earn an extra pound, with the tax threshold not having risen for years. Now that started under the Conservatives, and it's carried on under Labour, and I think that is grossly unfair, and the incentives to work harder nowadays are worse than they've been since the 1970s. Because if you have a marginal rate of taxation of 60, 70, 80%, why would you?
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm one of the I'm in that top bracket, and you kind of look at it at the end of the year and you think, what was the point? And where is the investment going to drive industry, to drive business? So I'm in high tech AI, and so I've been working all over the world, and the investment that other governments are making versus ours in this technology, it's laughable. We talk in millions when practically every other country is talking in billions, and it's those sort of, we're a knowledge economy, I would suggest, in the UK, and we need investment in those things. And candidly, the current government, they just don't have a clue what to invest in or how to invest in it.
Neil, thank you very much. Let's take this text from Sarah. It's from Anthony. As a Labour Party member, I need to finally hear what Burnham and Streeting have to say about the economy, Europe and social cohesion in the hustings. My vote will depend on that and the timescales they set out for those changes. Votes should depend, at least in part, on policy, but I do think it is about person. I mean, Tony Benn used to say, it's not about personalities, it's about policy. It's about the only impression I can do. And even that wasn't very good, was it? I never thought he was right on that, because I think politics is in part about personality. You have to have the personality of somebody who's a good debater, somebody who can convince people, someone who can show that they're a real person, that they have an interesting personality. You don't want an automaton robot in charge of the country. People wanted... after Boris Johnson, they wanted somebody maybe who was a bit duller and a bit of a technocrat. Well, you can say that about Keir Starmer, but in the end, I think people expect a little bit more than that. Right, this is from Sarah, I promise you. My adoring of your show hasn't been impeded by your admiration of the worst PM ever, Thatcher. Obviously delusional, Sarah, this evening. However, I drew the line at you suggesting that Angela Rayner would be a credible PM. There is not a single appealing characteristic of this embarrassing woman. I heart Wes Streeting. He's intelligent and has a more interesting backstory than Rayner. He's smart and would do us proud on the world stage. Well, I don't seek to diminish Angela Rayner. I know she's not everyone's cup of tea. I think she's a much cleverer person than you probably think, Sarah. She has a slightly abrasive manner from time to time. I'm not sure that's a bad thing, though. People don't like the way that she sounds. Well, that's probably being accentist, if that's a word that I can invent. I don't underestimate Angela Rayner. I think she is a character. We can do with characters in British politics. I do think she's an intelligent woman. I don't agree with much of the policies that she wants to promulgate. And on Wes Streeting, yes, he's intelligent. He does have an interesting backstory, but so does Angela Rayner. I don't think that we should vote for people based on where they've come from. I think we vote on where they're going to take the country. And as somebody who is not on the left, if you pushed me and said, well, look, which of these four is the country in safe hands with, I would say Wes Streeting. I'm not going to pretend that I would vote Labour if Wes Streeting was Prime Minister, but he's somebody who I would feel comfortable with him in number 10 in a way that I wouldn't with Ed Miliband, for example. And I will also say with Andy Burnham, less so. But Andy Burnham, I think, is, well, all mouth, no trousers to an extent. I don't think he's got the policy grounding that you need to be a good Prime Minister. Yes, he can sell a product, But he's not going to have had a hand in inventing the product. And you can't just say because he's been a good mayor of Manchester that automatically translates into being a good Prime Minister, can you? 0345 6060 973. It's 9:46.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
The Labour leadership contest is underway. Wes Streeting has resigned. Andy Burnham now has a route back to Westminster. But is Burnham the saviour that Labour needs?
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Shots from halfway causing goalkeeping howlers, roofs badly leaking from sudden rain showers, Saturday hackers and onion sizzling. These are a few of our favourite things. When you're singing yet not winning, when your bet's gone bad, we simply remember our favourite things and then we'll feel so glad.
For all your favourite things, visit BetVictor. 18+, gambleaware.org. Please gamble responsibly.
It's Munich, 1936, and all eyes are on the capital for the upcoming Olympic Games. As athletes fight for gold and the Nazis fight for power, Detective Sebastian Wolf faces a battle of his own. In a search that will take him from high society to the city's darkest corners, Wolf is about to learn just how easily the hunter becomes the hunted. Evil in High Places is the gripping new historical thriller from the million-copy bestseller Rory Clements. Out now.
The following is from TfL.
My name was Luna, like the moon. I was 2 days short of my 17th birthday when I was killed. My killer wasn't a bad man. He had a rescue dog called Frank and rang his mum every Sunday. He wasn't a speed freak. He just thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit. But that was enough to knock me off my bike and kill me.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
I'm in the kitchen with Charlie Bigham. So what have we got here, Charlie?
My brand new pan-fried pad thai noodles.
Noodles? But you're Mr. Fish Pie guy.
Guilty. And while ovens rule at roasting,
the pan is king of noodling.
Whether it's pad thai, yakisoba or laksa, finding that perfect texture is a bottomless noodle rabbit hole.
But all I have to do is stir it in the pan for 6 minutes, right?
Bingo! Try the new Charlie Bigham's Asian pan-fry noodle range. Handmade in my kitchen.
Pan-fried in yours.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
9:49 on LBC. Let's go to Hassan in Westminster. Hassan, very good evening. What would you like to tell us?
Yeah, look, I think the most important electoral struggle ahead of us is to stop Nigel Farage from becoming Prime Minister, which would be disastrous for this country. So the Labour leader should be the one who's most effective in stopping that from happening.
So you don't think being a competent Prime Minister might be a bit more important?
No, I think being a competent Prime Minister is obviously a prerequisite. And I don't think any of the contenders have proved themselves much. I think Burnham does seem to have a better track record at administering a large, one of our big metropolitan areas. So that's a positive for him. I think he's also, much more in line with the large majority of the Labour Party. So, and I think Streeting, to me, is just continuity Starmer. So that would be disastrous. I think the other thing,
but he's held off reform in his council area, hasn't he, or at least helped to?
Who has?
Streeting.
Streeting is in Redbridge. There is no risk of reform in Redbridge. Have you seen the demographics of Redbridge? It has. Well,
I've seen the demographics of many areas in London, yes, where reform have actually been quite successful. But I think there's only 2 reform councils. Was it 1 on Redbridge Council now?
Yeah, no, exactly. Out of 63 or something. But yeah. I think Streeting has Labour has survived Redbridge because the Redbridge Independents and the Greens did not cooperate. I think if Streeting is really the Prime Minister, I think these guys will love to cooperate and make sure that we lose the first Prime Minister to an electoral seat loss. So, and I think that's why also I think David Lammy was probably going to be ruled out because I think Haringey is being stormed by the Greens right now. So I think if Burnham does win in Makerfield, then that probably proves that he is the man to beat back reform. So he will.
I think that's true.
Important test.
If he beats reform there, that is a great platform for him to say, well, I've proved that I can do it here. Now I can do it in the rest of the country. I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And look, I think we need a change of direction from where Starmer has been steering the Labour Party and the government in, because that direction is where Reform keeps increasing its number of councillors and has victory after victory. So we do need a clear breach with Starmerism. And I think that's why I think Streeting would be absolutely the wrong choice.
What about Angela Rayner?
Look, I think she would be a better candidate than Streeting, of course. But I am not particularly impressed by Angela Rayner. I think she was close to the left and Corbyn, and then she abandoned them, and now is sort of somewhere in the middle, being very careful about her politics. So yeah, I think I would choose Burnham because he would have proven his ability to take on Reform rather than Angela Rayner. But I think there's two things. One is I'm shocked by what you mentioned, which is that he was the first health secretary who privatized a hospital. I think that's a terrible black mark.
Well, actually, his explanation from that is that he didn't actually privatise it. It was privatised in 2010 after the coalition got into power, but it had been set in motion by him as health secretary. So I probably was slightly inaccurate in my language there, but he was the one that proposed it and sort of introduced the legislation.
Yeah. And I think the PFI initiative has cost our NHS extremely highly, because I think what a lot of these privatizations, what they do is they place a lot of sort of future cost on government coffers. And I think that is really, and so I think we need to make sure that he sort of sets himself apart from his sort of Blairite past, where he was also in support of the Iraq war, etc. So I think we do need a very different Burnham from when he was last MP, because we all remember that he lost the party leadership contest to Corbyn quite handily.
Yeah, and he was actually I think I'm right in saying that he was initially he was the one that everyone thought would win, but he sort of faded. I always remember chairing a hustings between the four of them, and he did not perform well in that. Hassan, thank you. Let's go to Joe in Brighton. Hello, Joe.
Hi. I think Angela Rayner should be the chosen one. Should I tell you why?
Because she's got a flat in Brighton.
Not because of that. I think if she makes James Timpson Chancellor, change the rules so that he can talk in that House of Commons, I think James Timpson and Angela Rayner's roots with the unions, she would make a great industrial policy working along with James Timpson.
So you're talking about the prisons minister?
Yeah. He comes from a business family, so all this thing about the bond market, that will keep them at ease. I think if she introduces a policy of more courses for people who want to learn AI, because you've got these 28-day challenges, and that increases your employability. Even if you have no experience, you can get a job if you complete many of these 28-day AI challenges. I think her working with the unions and James Timpson will be a great team. I think Trump will be scared of her because he was frightened of Angela Merkel. Angela Merkel always made him look weak. And I think Angela's fight, I noticed that Burnham stutters when he's challenged, like so many ministers like Wes Streeting. Angela Rayner is stronger than all of them, and we need a woman Prime Minister for Labour. I think she is the one. Even Reform are scared of her. Nigel Farage always points her out as the one what would be a challenge for Reform. Andy Burnham may have done Manchester, but she passed through a lot of policies. What she should say to employers, will not have to pay NI if you employ under 100 employees. If you don't want to pay AI, then you must give housing allowance 1 year after employer comes past 1 year. If they're on housing benefit, you should pay 20% of their housing. That way you don't pay NI. So she should work with the unions and work with employers. I think she would be outstanding as Prime Minister. All these women seem to do the same thing with Meghan. They have a problem because of the way she is very strong. they prefer a man to be strong. So all those old school women always having to go at Angela Rayner, she is the right one. They thought that about Margaret Thatcher at first, didn't they? Angela Rayner is the Margaret Thatcher of Labour.
I'm not sure she'd take that very kindly, Joe.
But she's the one they're frightened of, that reform. And I know that Trump would be scared to challenge her. She would not bite her tongue. We don't want no weak leader bowing their head every time Trump speaks.
Okay.
Wes Streeting is a drip, and Bandy Burnham stutters under pressure.
All right, Joe, thank you. Let's finish off the programme with Abraham in Taunton. Abraham, hi.
Hi, nice talking to you. Well, I'll just say this quickly. If the Labour Party wants to win the next election, the best they can do is go back to being Labour. So they could give it a try and hope, even if they don't win, they should be the opposition. Going down the rabbit hole of immigration is just going to make things worse. We are in this country where nurses are currently working in the NHS and they're on the waiting list to get to America because America has a retrogressive system that puts you on the line on the waiting list to get a green card. The US is more attractive for nurses than the UK is. If we make this immigration policy harder for immigrants, we're just going to have a problem down the line. And even if reform gets to win, what then happens is if Labour becomes the opposition party, they will just watch the disaster of how reform is going to collapse this country, and they will have a template to come back into power. So let's not be scared of reform. Rather, let's focus on what Labour is known for: workers' rights and for the cost of living crisis we're currently going through. If they can improve that, I think nobody will be talking about immigration. Take immigration out of the room. Reform Party has no oxygen. They have nothing to talk about. They have nothing to do.
Well, that's a very interesting perspective, Abraham. I wish we had longer to talk, but we have reached nearly the end of the programme. But thank you very much indeed for your call. Right, let's just finish off with one text here from Sheila, who says, will it be too late to become a member of the Labour Party now? Asking because I'd like to be able to vote for Prime Minister. Thanks. I think you have to be a member of the Labour Party. I think it's for 3 months before you can vote in a leadership election. So it probably is too late if there is one. But if it goes beyond August, I suppose you could. But look, if you're a Labour Party supporter, if you're a supporter of any party, why not join them? Because you can then at least influence at times like this. Thank you very much for all of your calls and messages this evening and throughout this week. I'll be back on Monday evening from 7. I suspect there'll be a lot of water to pass under the bridge before then. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's Clive Bull. But right now, it's Ben Kentish.
Ian, thank you very much indeed. Hello there, and a very, very good evening this Thursday. Welcome to Late Nights with Ben Kentish right here on LBC. On the show,
take a deep breath, take a step back, reflect on the fact that we are less than 2 years into this parliament.
The pleas from allies of Keir Starmer for Labour MPs to calm down have gone nowhere. The unofficial Labour leadership contest has today kicked off in earnest. Wes Streeting has resigned as Health Secretary as he prepares his leadership bid, but in an even